Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Lauren Burke. Lauren Ashley Burke was born on December 30th, 1989, in Marietta, Georgia. Her parents, James Burke and Vivian Gershon, subsequently divorced. She had a sister named Jacqueline and a brother named Chad. After graduating from high school, Lauren attended Auburn University, where she studied graphic design, participated actively in the Delta Gamma sorority, played lacrosse, and engaged with the campus community. Lauren was described by her friends as a friendly and outstanding student, always smiling, happy, and eager to help. While in high school, she began dating a boy named Sean. After graduating, they both attended Auburn University, where they maintained their relationship. At this stage in their lives, education was a top priority for both. However, they also actively made future plans together. Sadly, not all of Lauren's dreams and aspirations were meant to be realized. On the morning of March 4, 2008, Lauren had breakfast at a cafe with her boyfriend, Sean. At 11 a.m., she attended class and then called her father, James, to talk about spring break plans and a dental visit. After her conversation with her father, she went to Sean's dorm and spent time there until the evening. She had a study appointment at 8:30 p.m. with her classmate, Michael, in the library. When Lauren left Sean's room around 8 p.m., it was already dark outside. She walked to her 2001 Honda Civic, which was parked in the lot beside the dorm. This was the last time Sean saw Lauren. Michael was supposed to meet Lauren at the library, but when she didn't show up, he began calling her cell phone repeatedly. After several calls, Lauren finally answered and informed him that she wouldn't be coming to the library because she had forgotten their appointment. She hung up shortly afterward. Later, around 9 p.m., 911 received a report about an injured girl lying on the road between Farmville Baptist Church and Route 280 on the 147 freeway. The girl was Lauren. Drivers stopped their cars, causing traffic to back up in both directions. Lauren was on her back in the middle of the road, struggling to breathe. She had multiple injuries and was only wearing socks. At 9:12 p.m., the first police car arrived at the scene, where Lauren was unconscious. A few minutes later, paramedics arrived and found her pulse barely detectable as they loaded her into the ambulance. By 9:35 p.m., Lauren was at East Alabama Medical Center, where doctors began attempts to save her life. Earlier, at 9:27 p.m., 911 dispatchers had received several reports of a car fire on the Auburn University campus, prompting an immediate response from firefighters and police. However, amidst a crowd of curious students gathered near the burning car, police could not locate the car owner. They checked the license plates and identified the car's owner as James Burke. James Burke is the father of Lauren. The police contacted him by phone to inform him that the Honda involved in a fire belonged to his daughter. Concerned, James immediately asked about her condition, but the police had no information. They did not know where Lauren was and confirmed that she was not in the burning car. After speaking with the officer, James tried calling Lauren's cell phone, but she didn't answer, increasing his worry. Unable to get in touch with her, he first called her friends, but none could provide any details about her location or the incident. Next, he reached out to his ex-wife hoping she might have some information, but she was also unaware of what had happened. At 9:40 p.m., Vivian called her daughter's boyfriend, Sean, to inform him that Lauren was missing and her car had been burned. Concerned, Sean reached out to mutual friends to see if anyone had seen Lauren that evening. He discovered that she had canceled a meeting at the library, claiming she had forgotten about it. However, Sean knew that Lauren had not forgotten, as she had planned to go directly to the library after leaving his place about 2 hours earlier. While family and friends were trying to locate Lauren, doctors at East Alabama Medical Center were working hard to save her life. They didn't know her name since she was brought in unconscious and without any personal belongings or identification. Sadly, despite the doctor's best efforts, they could not save Lauren's life, and she was pronounced dead about an hour after arriving at the hospital. The cause of death was a single bullet wound that had penetrated both of her lungs. Experts determined that the gun was fired from just a few inches away from her skin. Police officers, while investigating the connection between Lauren's death and a burned-out car on campus belonging to a missing person, quickly identified the victim as Lauren Burke. The day after her death, on March 5, 2008, James traveled from Atlanta to identify his daughter's body. The news of Lauren's death rapidly circulated throughout the campus. Auburn University issued a statement regarding Lauren's passing, advising students and staff to be more vigilant both on and off campus, while also reassuring them that the campus remained safe. The statement emphasized, "Many of you and your parents have called and are understandably concerned. There is no indication of any additional danger to campus or student safety." Auburn Police spokesman Captain Tom Stouffer stated, "We are dedicating all our resources to finding the person responsible for this crime. Auburn, Alabama is a peaceful community for students, and incidents like this affect us deeply. When someone is harmed or loses their life, it impacts us all. We will not stop until we identify the perpetrator." He also mentioned that Alabama Governor Bob Riley has announced a $10,000 reward for any information that leads to an arrest in Lauren's case. Lauren's burned car was transported to the Auburn Police Department, where investigators from the State Forensic Laboratory and officers from the State Fire Chief's office examined the charred interior. They discovered pieces of burned clothing, Lauren's melted digital camera, and the car owner's manual. A .38 caliber bullet was found under the front seat, suggesting that the car's interior may have been the crime scene and that the arsonist intended to destroy evidence by setting it on fire. Detectives interviewed Lauren's family, friends, and boyfriend, but none could identify anyone who wanted to harm her or had the motive to do so. Investigators searched Sean's dorm room, where Lauren had been before her death, but found no evidence linking him to the crime. After talking to Michael, whom Lauren was supposed to meet at the library, detectives learned that when Lauren answered his call, he heard a sound that resembled a moving car. Additionally, it was discovered that someone had used Lauren's bank card multiple times shortly after she was found on the road. This suggested that the person who used her bank card might be connected to her incident, prompting the police to start searching for him. Less than 3 days after Lauren's passing, an unexpected event occurred. On March 7, 2008, at 9:55 a.m., a man of African descent assaulted a 72-year-old woman in the parking lot of a Walmart in Newnan, Georgia, about 75 miles from Auburn. As she was getting into her car, he struck her on the head, threatened her, and ordered her to enter the passenger seat. After getting into the driver's seat, he attempted to flee the parking lot but realized that an eyewitness was following him while on the phone. The thought that the eyewitness might call the police made the man return to the Walmart parking lot. He parked the stolen vehicle, got out, ran to a nearby Chrysler Sebring, entered it, and quickly drove away. A few hours later, four officers pursued the fleeing Chrysler at high speed towards Columbus, West Georgia. The driver ignored all attempts to stop, putting other road users at risk. During the pursuit, police saw the driver throw something out of the window. One of the police teams stopped to search for the object and found a .38 caliber revolver on the side of the road. The chase continued until high vehicle broke down, causing smoke to pour from the hood. The driver suddenly stopped in the road and opened the door. A police officer on a motorcycle, chasing the suspect, collided with the open door. The impact caused the officer to be thrown over the handlebars and onto the pavement, but he was fortunately not seriously injured. The suspect then ran into the nearby woods in an attempt to escape. However, the police quickly apprehended him and placed handcuffs on his wrists. He was Courtney Lockhart, born on October 20th, 1984. His family remembers him as a friendly and fun-loving person until he joined the U.S. Army. He was deployed to Iraq in 2004 and returned in 2005, but he came back a changed man. His mother observed that he was no longer the Courtney she once knew. She noted that he had been cheerful before his deployment, but after returning from Iraq, he never smiled again. He became very cautious about his surroundings and sometimes even hid in the closet or under the bed. In 2006, Courtney and his girlfriend, who had already broken up, welcomed a daughter. That same year, he faced a court-martial for assaulting fellow soldiers, using illegal drugs, and deserting his unit without permission. He spent 7 months in detention and was dishonorably discharged from the Army in December 2006. As 2008 neared, Courtney's behavior deteriorated significantly. He rarely showered, stopped seeing his daughter, and became severely addicted to illegal drugs. In February 2008, he began a series of burglaries. Aside from one robbery at a convenience store, his approach was consistent. He would approach women from behind as they were getting into their cars in parking lots, threaten them with a gun, demand their purses, and try to steal their cars. One of these attacks led to the death of Lauren. Courtney's crime spree ended on March 7, 2008, when he attacked a 72-year-old woman and could not escape from the police. After his arrest, 23-year-old Courtney was brought to the police station, where he confessed to kidnapping and killing Lauren. The interrogation was videotaped and served as crucial evidence during the trial. Furthermore, Lauren's personal items, including her iPod and bank cards, were discovered in his car. Courtney provided a detailed description of the events from the day he kidnapped Lauren, which took place on Tuesday, March 4, 2008. Courtney woke up in his Chrysler Sebring after spending the night in his car near East Alabama Medical Center. He was in need of money, so he drove around Auburn searching for a potential target. It's important to mention that all his victims were women. He never targeted men. His drive took him to Auburn University, where he parked near the student dormitories. He spent several hours in his car observing the students. Around 8 p.m., he saw a girl walk up to the car next to him and casually open the door. It was Lauren. Without thinking much, Courtney grabbed his revolver and approached Lauren from behind, pressing the gun against her. He asked her how much money she had. When she didn't respond, he forced her into the front passenger seat of the car and took the driver's seat. Courtney claimed that Lauren didn't speak but screamed in fear. Once she calmed down, she took out $200 from her purse, gave it to him, and pleaded with him to let her go. Instead of leaving, he ordered Lauren to undress at gunpoint. Fearing for her safety, Lauren complied, removing all her clothing except for a pair of socks. Courtney believed that by making her undress, she would be less likely to try to escape. He then drove around Auburn, controlling the car with one hand while aiming the gun at Lauren with the other. As she tried to convince him not to go through with his plan, he lamented that his life was over. In response, Lauren promised to help him find a job. At one point, Lauren's phone rang. Courtney urged her to answer it and come up with a believable excuse. It was Michael calling, who was waiting for Lauren at the library. When she picked up the phone, she quickly said she had forgotten about the meeting and hung up. Courtney mentioned that they continued driving through the city, while Lauren persistently tried to persuade him to let her go, insisting that she could help him through his troubles. While driving on Highway 147, Lauren suddenly opened the door and attempted to jump out of the moving car. At that moment, Courtney accidentally fired a shot. The bullet struck both of Lauren's lungs, and she also suffered injuries from the fall. Despite her injuries, she was able to wave to passing drivers until she eventually lost consciousness. Courtney told investigators that he parked near the church and observed as cars began to stop next to Lauren on the pavement. Realizing that the police would arrive soon, he quickly fled, intending to destroy any evidence left in the car. Investigators began to question the truthfulness of Courtney's testimony. They suspected that Courtney had made Lauren undress, not to prevent her from escaping as he claimed, but for another reason altogether. However, Lauren managed to jump out of the moving car, foiling Courtney's intentions. The investigators also questioned whether Courtney had accidentally shot Lauren, as it seemed unlikely. He had served in the army and was familiar with firearms. It appeared more plausible that Lauren recognized Courtney wouldn't let her go and believed her only chance for escape was to jump out. As she opened the door and jumped out of the car, Courtney deliberately shot her. Ballistics testing confirmed that the bullet found in Lauren's car was fired from the gun that Courtney had discarded while fleeing from the police. Experts conducted tests and determined that the gun could not have discharged accidentally. The trigger needed to be pulled firmly to fire a shot. Lauren's family and friends held a farewell for her on March 9th, the same day investigators questioned Courtney for the second time. The following day, he was officially charged multiple times in connection with the Lauren Burke case. The trial commenced on November 8, 2010. Courtney's lawyers argued that their client suffered from a mental illness linked to his military service and that the shooting of Lauren was unintentional. Court records show that Courtney pleaded not guilty by reason of mental defect or insanity. A psychologist testified in court, stating that Courtney had an IQ of 86, which is below average, and exhibited some symptoms from his combat experience, although he did not have PTSD. The psychologist also described Courtney as immature and lacking clear judgment. The state tried to present evidence about Courtney's other crimes and his misconduct in the military, but the trial judge did not allow it. After the trial's guilt phase, the sentencing phase began right away. Courtney brought in witnesses and evidence to portray himself as a war hero who was mentally affected by combat and the death of his commanding officer. The jury reached a special verdict, noting that an additional aggravating factor was that a life was taken during the kidnapping. The jury unanimously recommended a sentence of life without the possibility of parole. However, the trial judge ultimately rejected the jury's recommendation for a lesser sentence and sentenced Courtney to death. In a detailed 28-page order, the judge outlined his reasons for this decision. He emphasized that the severity of the kidnapping made the death penalty justified. The victim, who was unarmed and chosen at random, was alone when she was abducted. The judge pointed out that the crime was particularly horrifying because it occurred on a college campus, a setting where students expect to feel safe. Courtney not only forced the victim into her own car but also made her undress and threatened her with a gun to prevent her from escaping. The court highlighted that the jury did not know about Courtney's criminal activities or the real details of their military service. While the jury received some information about Courtney's service, they were not informed about the complete disciplinary history. The judge noted that if the jury had been aware of this additional information, their recommendation for sentencing would probably have been different. 15 years have passed since Lauren's death, and Courtney remains was on death row in Alabama, continuing his efforts to appeal his sentence. After being convicted and sentenced to death, he first appealed to an Alabama court, which upheld his sentence in August 2013. In April 2014, the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals rejected Courtney's request for a retrial. He subsequently appealed to the Supreme Court of Alabama, but his motion was denied again in September 2014. In January 2015, Courtney appealed to the Supreme Court of the United States, but in April 2015, his petition was also denied. In 2018, Courtney attempted once more to contest his sentence. Lawyers from a human rights organization, representing him, argued that the attorneys who defended Courtney in 2010 had mishandled his case. Although there were some issues with Courtney's defense in 2010, these issues did not affect the final decision and his death sentence was upheld. In April 2021, the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals confirmed Courtney's death sentence. Lauren's parents are determined to prevent the overturning of Courtney Lockhart's death sentence. Jim, Lauren's father, stated, "Courtney Lockhart was responsible for my daughter's death. He deserves the death penalty." Vivian, Lauren's mother, added, "He didn't give her a second chance, so he shouldn't be given one either." Currently, Courtney Lockhart is still on death row in Alabama. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Amanda Blackburn. Amanda Grace Byers Blackburn was born on July 31, 1987, in Muskegon, Michigan. She began her education in Indianapolis, Indiana, but her family moved to Elkhart in 1995. In Elkhart, Amanda graduated from Elkhart Christian Academy in 2006. She then continued her education and graduated with an associate degree from Pensacola Christian College in Florida in 2008. Amanda grew up in a family with strong religious beliefs. Her father was the lead pastor at the First Baptist Church in Elkhart, Indiana. From a young age, she was taught about Christianity and the importance of God's Word. Amanda was well-versed in the church's religious traditions, sermons, and psalms, and she always respected these values. While many other young people were eager to experience adult life, attend parties, and fall in love, Amanda had a love for Jesus and a desire to serve Him. God also loved Amanda because He created her as an angel, a blonde, slim girl with a bright smile, kind and sincere. Not only is Amanda beautiful, but her soul and heart are also very pure. Her every action shows love for those around her. When she was a teenager, Amanda vowed to remain pure and not kiss any man until marriage. She always kept that promise. However, her heart was deeply moved when she met her true and only love, Davy Blackburn, a boy from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. He studied religion at Southern Wesleyan University and came from a Christian family with strong faith. Davy and Amanda first met on a blind date at a concert by the Christian band Hawk Nelson, organized by Amanda's sister and Davy's best friend. At that time, they were studying at different universities, but every vacation, they spent time together. It was a pure and innocent love, not dominated by worldly desires. Davy and Amanda often went for walks together, shared their innermost thoughts and favorite quotes from church books. They always found joy in the little things and loved to joke with each other sincerely. Before returning to school, they held a fake milkshake drinking contest, and Amanda lost. Davy jokingly called her Milk Girl. When he looked at Amanda, he realized that she was the girl he wanted to marry. Amanda and Davy had a long-distance relationship. They kept in touch via text messages and phone calls, spending hours talking to each other. Every vacation, they spent time together. They took their relationship so seriously that they even sought counseling from a psychologist to learn how to communicate better. On August 1, 2008, Amanda and Davy got married. After the wedding, Davy shared with friends that from the moment he kissed Amanda, he felt a special connection between them, and he believed it was part of God's plan for them. On the morning of November 10, 2015, a car parked outside a house on Sunnyfield Court. Davy was returning from his daily workout at the gym. He was about to get out of the car, but a phone call kept him in the car for a few minutes. After ending the call, he leisurely got out of the car and walked into the house. When he opened the door, he froze and his gym bag fell from his hands. His wife was lying on the living room floor in a pool of blood. Davy was confused and in shock. He ran to his wife, did a preliminary check, took her pulse, and urgently called the emergency number. Amanda appeared to be alive. In the living room where the tragedy occurred, everything was in disarray. Furniture was scattered everywhere, and her purse was empty. On the second floor of the house, her child was crying. Emergency services arrived at the house 8 minutes later. The area was cordoned off. The house was packed with police and investigators. She was taken to the hospital. On November 11th, The day Amanda was officially confirmed dead, Davy released an official statement, saying that Amanda had dedicated her life to loving and serving those around her. Amanda had made it her mission to help more people come to know Jesus as their personal savior. Davy believed that through Amanda's death and legacy, more people would find faith in Christ. He affirmed that they would continue the work they had begun in Indianapolis. Davy expressed his strong belief that God was good, that their tragedy was turning into victory, and that the best was yet to come. The murder of Amanda shocked not only the Orthodox family but the entire state. People demanded that the perpetrators of the murders of Amanda and her unborn child be found and punished. In his first interview, Davy described how he found his wife, Amanda, severely injured and unconscious on the living room floor. She was only partially dressed, with her underwear lying nearby, face down in a pool of blood. Davy said he left the house around 6 a.m. to exercise and left the door unlocked. "I always do that, I leave without locking the door," he told investigators. It is unclear whether the criminals would have stopped if Davy had locked the door. However, locking the door would have made it more difficult for them to enter, giving Amanda more time to call for help. Unfortunately, that did not happen, and Amanda was shot 3 times, including once in the head. In the days following the incident, police had not arrested the perpetrator. They quickly ruled out the possibility that Davy, Amanda's husband, was involved in the horrific attack. The police have taken a statement from Scott Floyd, an Indianapolis Fire Department paramedic. Scott was the first to arrive at the scene after Davy called 911. When he arrived, he found Davy standing at the end of the driveway with blood on his hands. Scott noted that Davy appeared calm and did not seem to understand what had happened to Amanda. Davy told Scott that Amanda was lying on the floor and that he could not wake her up. Davy said that he got home from the gym at 7:30 a.m. and called his friend Kenneth Wagner while he was in the driveway. He ended the call and entered the house at 8:10 a.m., where he found Amanda lying face down on the floor. Thinking that Amanda was sick or unconscious, he called 911 at 8:22 a.m., 12 minutes after discovering her. That is a long time in an emergency. Davy repeatedly stated he thought there was a problem with the pregnancy, suspecting Amanda had become dizzy and fallen. However, it was suspicious that after 12 minutes, he did not notice a brain mass about 5 feet from her body. Emergency room physician Scott Floyd determined that Amanda's head had clotted, suggesting that the shooting may have occurred several hours before she was taken to the hospital. However, this information was not officially released. When questioned, Davy said that after calling 911, he contacted his father. Defense attorneys did not question Davy further. Authorities verified Davy's account through surveillance cameras at the gym and ruled him out as a suspect. An autopsy performed on November 12 showed that Amanda had been shot 3 times, once in the back of the head, once in the left arm, and once through the upper back. She also had several scratches on her left cheek, a laceration to her lip, and a missing lower tooth. These injuries suggested that a struggle may have occurred between Amanda and her attacker. The investigation was extensive, including reviewing security cameras from nearby streets and interviewing neighbors and family acquaintances. One neighbor reported hearing gunshots about 35 minutes after Davy left the house. Reginald Townsell, another neighbor, commented that their neighborhood did not typically experience shootings and that the Blackburns did not deserve this. The community was shocked by the incident, as they considered the Blackburns to be good and likable people. Based on Amanda's injuries and the loss of her bank cards and MacBook bag, police initially thought it might have been a robbery. After the murder of Amanda, on the morning of November 10, 2015, the police received multiple emergency calls reporting a series of break-ins near Blackburn's home, which occurred at approximately 5:20 a.m. One victim, a woman, woke up to find her mobile phone, laptop, wallet, keys, and car missing. The sliding glass door to her flat was opened. 3 hours later, another woman reported a burglary at her home on Sunnyfield Court. The break-in happened when the burglars smashed the glass door of her porch to gain entry. According to the police report, several valuables were taken, including 4 televisions, a MacBook Pro, a Tiffany pearl necklace, a pink women's sweater, a remote control, a bag of oranges, and bedding. Indianapolis Police Lieutenant Richard stated they were investigating the connection between the murder and other burglaries that occurred in the area that morning. To maintain the confidentiality of the investigation, the police are not releasing many details. However, after collecting images of the suspects from one of the homes that were broken into, they released the images and asked for the public's help in identifying and providing information. Davey is confident in the police's efforts to catch the perpetrators of his wife's murder. Investigators said they have been given unprecedented powers of investigation. They hope promising leads will soon help identify the perpetrators. The main clues used to track down the suspects were a stolen pink sweater, cell phone records, and ATM receipts. Receipts and a sweater were found in a stolen Chrysler Sebring used in the robbery. On November 11th, police impounded a vehicle near Blackburn's home. The receipts in the car had a debit card number that matched Amanda's stolen card. After obtaining a search warrant, investigators viewed ATM camera video, which showed the driver wearing a stolen pink beanie to cover his face. Police identified the suspects through 3 primary methods: DNA testing, surveillance cameras, and witness statements. DNA testing from a sweater confirmed Jalen Watson as one of the suspects. The identification of Jalen was a critical first step in the investigation, according to the report. Police obtained cell phone records for Jalen and his friend, Diana Gordon. Jalen's records were available because he had been paroled after a previous burglary conviction. These records showed that their phones were in the area where the crimes occurred. Additionally, phone records indicated that Diana and Jalen were near the Chase Bank on the day of the murder, where Amanda's debit card was used. To complete the investigation, police reviewed surveillance footage in the area and identified Larry Taylor's phone number, which led to his address. Taylor was the final link in the case. In the following days, a gun was reported found near the Blackburn family home. According to police, a man gave the gun to the Broad Ripple Fire Department, claiming to have found it outside Amanda's home. The gun was later analyzed by forensic experts. After 2 weeks of investigation and working with detectives, police charged Larry Taylor, 18, and Jalen Watson, 21, with the murder of Amanda. A third burglary suspect, Diana Gordon, 24, was arrested for violating her parole but was not charged with a felony because she did not enter the Blackburn home. During questioning, Larry admitted to shooting the victim twice because she jumped on him and he was afraid of being scratched. After the victim fell, Larry shot her again in the back of the head and watched as she bled to death. The crime occurred when the 3 criminals broke into the Blackburn family home to rob money. They took advantage of the fact that Davey had left the door unlocked before going to exercise. Once inside, they prevented Amanda from approaching by threatening her with a gun, and Larry even fired at her. Jalen and Diana, witnessing the tense situation with Amanda, decided to leave. They had obtained bank cards from a previous robbery and went to an ATM to withdraw money. Initially, they failed to withdraw $500 from one machine, but then succeeded in withdrawing $1,400 from another. This was when the security camera captured their images. They then drove back to the Blackburn house to pick up Larry. During their absence, a fight broke out in the house. Amanda woke up after being beaten and fought back against her attacker, who was assaulting another woman. Larry then placed the stolen credit cards in the car of an accomplice, who used the cards at an ATM at the time of the incident. Upon their return, Larry admitted to shooting Amanda. According to court records, Larry, Jalen, and Diana committed 3 burglaries on November 10th, with the Blackburn home being the third target. In the first incident, they entered a home while the homeowner was sleeping and stole a laptop, a wallet, and a car. Despite discovering security cameras, they left without difficulty. In the second incident, they broke in through a porch window and stole 4 televisions, a laptop, jewelry, a bag of oranges, and a pink sweater. The sweater later helped police identify the group. The report outlines the evidence police gathered against the suspects, based on court documents. The most crucial piece of evidence was Jalen's DNA on the pink sweater, used in the second burglary and later to cover his face when he tried to withdraw cash using Amanda's bank card. Jalen and Diana cooperated with the investigation in exchange for reduced sentences. Larry waived his right to remain silent and admitted to being near the scene of the burglary but claimed he was too confused to remember specifics. The district attorney filed formal charges. Larry faced 13 counts, including the attempted murder of Amanda Blackburn. Jalen was charged with a felony. Both Larry and Jalen faced multiple counts of burglary and robbery. Diana, in custody for a parole violation, was also charged with burglary. A fourth person who knew about the robberies and burglaries but did not participate was interviewed and released. The Indianapolis Police Department's Violent Crimes Unit, along with the Gang Unit and the FBI, worked to arrest Larry. Police Chief Rick Height praised the cooperation that led to the suspect's arrest. Detectives worked tirelessly to investigate homicides in the city. With the assistance of Assistant U.S. Attorney Josh Minkler and District Attorney Terry Curry, justice was served. Because the victim was pregnant, prosecutors considered additional charges related to the fetus. Though the victim's underwear was removed and her shirt was pulled up, there was no evidence to support a rape charge. Larry's first trial in December 2021 was dismissed after a juror leaked information to other jurors. The trial was rescheduled for October 2022 with a more rigorous jury selection process. Over 100 jury candidates filled out a 16-page questionnaire for attorneys to evaluate their ability to render fair verdicts. Larry was sentenced to 86 years in the Indiana State Correctional Institution for the murder of Amanda and related burglary charges. Co-defendants Diana and Jalen pleaded guilty, testified against Larry, and received sentences of 20 to 35 years. Jalen and Larry are currently incarcerated in the Marion County Jail. Under Indiana law, penalties for murder range from 45 to 60 years, with the possibility of life imprisonment or the death penalty in some cases. Prosecutors have requested that Larry be given an additional 20 years in prison because Amanda was pregnant at the time of her murder. Davey, the victim's husband and a pastor, expressed relief that the perpetrator was caught and could no longer harm others. The case has shocked many, including state leaders. Amanda's funeral was held at a Catholic church with more than 2,000 people in attendance, including Governor Mike Pence. The local church has set up a fundraising page to help with Amanda's funeral and medical expenses. Davey expressed hope that the justice system will wisely deal with those who have caused great pain to his family. Surprisingly, he has repeatedly said he forgives his wife's killers. Davey told the press, "I felt relieved when I heard about the arrest. Although I wanted to hate, feel anger, and despair, I chose the path of forgiveness, tolerance, and hope." Amanda's case has attracted widespread attention, being reported in many media outlets both domestically and internationally. After his wife's death, Davey transformed from the role of a grieving husband to a popular blogger. He created a series of podcasts and videos called Nothing Wasted, discussing his experience. Davey appeared regularly on television, talking about his wife's death and the pain he had gone through. However, his behavior was not typical of a grieving person. The tragedy seemed to bring Davey both fame and fortune. The fact that he received insurance money after his wife's death has raised questions about whether forgetting to lock the door on November 10, 2015, was really an accident. On March 2, 2016, Davy bought a spacious new home with 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and a pool. He also sold the house where his late wife Amanda was murdered. Despite his recent loss, Davy was quite optimistic. In July 2016, he posted a photo of his new home on his blog with the caption, "I'm excited to have a pool party at my new home." Today, Davy is remarried and happily so. He shared, "Everything makes sense. I feel blessed. When I focus on Jesus and look at his wonderful face, everything mundane becomes small in the light of his glory and goodness." Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Gerardo couple. Jennair Gerardo was born December 19, 1970, in the city of Fort Wayne, Allen County, Indiana, USA. She spent her childhood and teenage years in the area. Jennair graduated from Bishop Luers High School, where she achieved excellent results in advanced courses. She then attended Purdue University at Indianapolis, studying communication and actively participating in the theater arts program. Later, she continued her communication studies at Butler University. Jennair earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in Communication and Theater Arts. Throughout her career, she worked in marketing for various Indiana companies, including roles in Carmel and Indianapolis. Notably, she served as marketing manager at Cercier Instrumentation for several years. In the summer of 1986, Jennair met Mark Gerardo in Fort Wayne, Indiana. At the time, they were both teenagers, and Jennair was working at a local Taco Bell. Mark was immediately drawn to her, captivated by her striking blue eyes and bright smile. Mark was initially unable to express his feelings to Jennair. The romance between Mark and Jennair only really began when they met again by chance after 4 years, at a nearby shopping mall where Jennair was working. He began visiting her frequently, and one day, she encouraged him to make a move, asking him directly when he would take her out. Jennair's confidence and willingness to speak her mind drew Mark to her. He described her demeanor as the opposite of his own, admiring her boldness. Melissa Murphy, a childhood friend of Jennair's, recalled how excited Jennair was when she first met Mark, saying Jennair was convinced he was the one and would do anything for him. Mark and Jennair got married on October 23, 1993, when Mark was 25 and Jennair was 23. Their relationship, which began in adolescence, continued to flourish into adulthood. Mark reflected on their happiness together, saying he couldn't imagine spending his life with anyone else. However, like any couple, Mark and Jennair faced challenges in their marriage and had to navigate the low points together. Mark said the arguments between him and his wife were very tense, and Jennair always won because she wanted to be the one to make the final decision. Mark's high school friend, Mike Hartman, shared that although he wasn't privy to all the details of their relationship, he knew they had fierce disagreements. Despite their strong marriage, the 2008 financial crisis significantly impacted them. Mark later mentioned that it changed everything, and money became a major source of stress and arguments. In November 2011, they relocated to Greenville, South Carolina, where they found new marketing jobs. Exploring the state's beautiful landscapes brought them closer together, and their marriage experienced a renewal. However, their renewed life came to a halt in 2017. Jennair lost her job, leaving her struggling to find a new one, and she was no longer the strong, confident woman she once was. Around this time, the couple felt it was time for a change and a fresh start. They decided to move to Delaware, and Mark began looking for a job right away. He came across a job posting at the University of Delaware for a creative director in the marketing department, a role that would come with supervisory responsibilities. Mark emailed his application and quickly received a response from a woman 15 years his junior, who would be his supervisor if he got the job. She invited him for an interview. Initially, Mark was nervous about working under someone 15 years younger than him, but his worries soon disappeared after meeting Meredith Chapman. This was their first encounter. At the time, Meredith was 33 years old and originally from Pennsylvania. She had graduated from the University of Delaware with a bachelor's in communication and a master's in education. She was married to Luke, a former New York City councilman, and they lived in Fairfield Crest, Delaware, with their dog Indy. The couple had married in 2009. During his interview, Mark was immediately drawn to Meredith's beauty and intelligence. He recalled thinking, "I have to work for this person," within 5 minutes of sitting across from her. He found her articulate, energetic, and passionate about her job, and was impressed by her accomplishments at such a young age. Meredith seemed impressed by Mark, as she immediately offered him the job. Mark gratefully accepted the offer and moved to Wilmington, Delaware in November 2017. His wife, Jen Eyre, stayed behind in South Carolina to lease out their home. Mark was excited about the new opportunity and the chance to advance his career. Unbeknownst to him, this marked the start of the demise of his marriage to Jen Eyre. Mark spent 45 days living alone in Delaware, getting to know Meredith better. They discovered they had a lot in common, and she invited him out for a drink one evening. Mark found it easy to talk to Meredith and opened up to her about his marriage to Jen Eyre, sharing some of his personal struggles. He also told her about the loss of his parents and brother. Mark was unaware of what was happening between him and Meredith at first. Mark stated that he really hadn't known what was happening. He admits that he feels affection for Meredith and expresses that being with her is a wonderful experience. After their dinner date, he started to understand his feelings and realized he was attracted to her. As Mark spent more time with Meredith, the issues in his marriage became more apparent. He began to compare Meredith to his wife, noting that Meredith praised him and made him feel appreciated, which was something his wife never did. Mark was really touched by Meredith's compliments. Mark was deeply attracted to Meredith, but he felt guilty about betraying his wife. As a result, he initially attempted to end his relationship with Meredith. However, he couldn't shake off the feelings he had developed for her, especially after learning that Meredith was unhappy in her own 9-year marriage. Mark explains that his relationship with Meredith is great, which made it difficult for him to shut down the relationship. He wanted to understand what drew them together. Before Jen Eyre joined her husband in Delaware, Mark and Meredith had already confessed their love for each other. Mark felt it was natural to express his love for Meredith, as the feeling was powerful. In December 2017, Jen Eyre moved north and noticed Mark's distant behavior. She soon confronted him, sensing that he might be involved with another woman. Jen Eyre asked Mark what was going on with him and said that he was acting different. Jen Eyre specifically mentioned Meredith because Mark often mentioned her when discussing new job. Although Mark initially denied the affair, Jen Eyre continued to question him, aware that something was amiss between him and Meredith. She began to closely monitor his activities. Mark is confused as to why Jen Eyre knows the private aspects of his affair with Meredith. Around Valentine's Day in 2008, Jen Eyre collected evidence that her husband was having an affair. However, this came at a cost. Mark discovered that Jen Eyre had hired a company to hack into his phone, allowing her to read his texts, view his photos, and access his call records with Meredith. Mark confessed to Jen Eyre that he had developed feelings for Meredith, unable to continue the deception. Jen Eyre, heartbroken but determined to save their marriage, asked Mark to attend marriage counseling with her, and he agreed. However, during their second session, Mark discovered a recording device hidden in his jacket. Initially thinking it was an anti-theft device, he realized it was actively recording him. Furious, Mark confronted Jen Eyre. She claimed she wanted to understand the extent of his relationship with Meredith and suspected they were planning something together. This has been marked the beginning of the end for Mark and Jen Eyre's marriage. Mark eventually told Jen Eyre that he intended to file for divorce in May 2018, once he had met the residency requirements in Delaware and could leave their shared home. During this period, Meredith Chapman's life was on an upward trajectory. She had landed a new role as assistant vice president at Villanova University in Pennsylvania and relocated to Radnor Township. Meanwhile, her marriage was coming to an end, paving the way for her to pursue a relationship with Mark. As Meredith and Mark's relationship deepened, Jen Eyre was Mark's wife at that time, began consulting with divorce coach Sheila Brennan. Jen Eyre was struggling with feelings of bitterness and anger, stemming from being replaced by a younger woman. Her concerns were compounded by financial uncertainty, having moved north without securing a new job. Jen Eyre's situation continued to deteriorate, ultimately taking a toll on her mental health. Mark noticed her distress and suggested that she see a psychiatrist for professional help. He also encouraged her to reach out to family and friends, as she had mentioned suicidal thoughts and even threatened to jump out of a window. Mark stated that Jen Eyre appeared to have come to terms with their upcoming divorce. She walked up to him with a list of things she wanted him to do in the weeks before he officially moved out. Her requests included activities such as going on hikes, having dinner together, and generally spending quality time as a couple. Mark agreed to fulfill her requests, thinking it would help Jen Eyre be in a better emotional state. During this time, Jen Eyre appeared to be acting normally, although she would occasionally become emotional and break down in tears. Over the next few weeks, Jen Eyre started posting on the app Nextdoor. She was looking for recommendations for a good marriage counselor who could help couples that were close to getting a divorce. In her post, Jen Eyre specified that they needed a counselor with extensive education and experience in handling complex issues such as infidelity, depression, traumatic experiences, and child-parent dynamics. However, unbeknownst to Mark, Jen Eyre had secretly been planning her revenge. On the night of April 23, 2018, Mark and his wife Jen Eyre were scheduled to meet at a restaurant to discuss their divorce agreement. However, Jen Eyre sent Mark a series of messages, first saying she was running late, then telling him to go home as she wouldn't make it to the. Mark got up to leave, but minutes later, he received a disturbing picture from Jen Eyre, an image of trash with a condom in the middle. This led him to believe Jen Eyre was rummaging through Meredith's trash can outside her home. More text messages followed, including one that said he had ruined co-life. Jen Eyre's next messages were even more ominous, saying she hoped he never found happiness and she had said goodbye to Mark. Alarmed and fearing for Meredith's safety, Mark tried to contact Meredith multiple times, but all his calls and texts went unanswered. Worried about a confrontation between Jen Eyre and Meredith, Mark rushed to Meredith's house. What he found was far more horrific than he had anticipated. Upon arrival, he discovered Meredith lying face down on her kitchen floor. Around her head was a pool of blood. Nearby, he also found Jen Eyre's lifeless body on the floor. Mark shouted in shock and ran to Meredith. He said, "Baby, oh baby, what have you done?" Meredith had excitedly posted on her Instagram about her new job at Villanova less than 2 hours before she died, expressing her excitement. According to Meredith's 5:42 p.m. post, after just 1 week on the job, she's already earned the love of fans at NOA Nation. Later that evening, she arrived at her home on Lowry Lane in Radnor Township, parked her Audi in the driveway, opened the door, and walked inside, unaware that Jen Eyre had broken in and was hiding, waiting to attack her. When Mark got there, Tim, one of Meredith's neighbors, was present. He mentioned that he heard a commotion and went out to see what happened. Mark asked him to call 911. Sergeant Christopher Ford of the Radnor Township Police Department said the call made his heart sink. Sergeant Christopher said they don't usually get calls like this. When they arrived, the scene was chaotic with a lot of police present. Mark, who appeared out of breath according to Christopher, was put in an ambulance before being taken to the police station as a suspect. After questioning Mark and discovering that the gun used in the two deaths was under Jen Eyre's body, the police concluded that Jen Eyre had broken into Meredith's home, killed her, and then committed suicide. The police received a tip from witness, who claimed to see a woman in a trench coat, hat, sunglasses, and possibly a wig watching the house with binoculars. They also found a set of car keys at the crime scene that were traced to a Cadillac rented by Jen Eyre. Mark was surprised to learn about the Cadillac. He said he learned most of this from the police and the news. Jen Eyre had rented the car 2 weeks before the incident, and it was parked just outside their apartment. Mark continued his investigation by examining his wife's bank statements, phone records, and computer backups, discovering that she was leading a double life. After Mark confessed to his affair shortly after Valentine's Day, he found out that Jen Eyre had opened a secret bank account and credit cards. She used these cards to buy audio surveillance equipment, a lock-picking kit, computer hacking software, and DNA testing kits for his clothes. Mark also revealed that she purchased advanced GPS tracking devices and attached them to both his and Meredith's cars. Mark stated that he had found over 400 images of private conversations between Meredith and him from text and Snapchat, and that Jen Eyre would access his phone in the middle of the night. On March 20, 2018, 5 weeks before committing the murder, Jen Eyre bought the gun she used in the murder and suicide. Her credit card statements showed that she practiced shooting the gun 3 times at a firing range. Mark claimed that Jen Eyre had secretly placed several recording devices in his clothes. He discovered files containing hundreds of hours of audio recordings his wife had not only recorded but also transcribed into notebooks. According to Mark, Jen Eyre had taken all his jackets and embedded multiple devices, constantly switching them in and out. Every day, she would remove a device, download the recorded content, and then sew it back into his jacket, repeating this process for weeks. It was revealed that on the night Jen Eyre killed Meredith and herself, she emailed a letter to her family, chillingly explaining her motive. She had begun the letter weeks prior, dating her entries, and described how it was an act of revenge for what he had done to her, saying, "That's as simple as it gets." Dr. Robbie Ludwig, a psychotherapist who studied marriage-related homicides and Red Letter, suggested that Jen Eyre may have been driven to kill Meredith and herself because she could not bear losing Mark. Dr. Robin commented that, in his opinion, there was something about listening to the recordings that made Jen Eyre angry and upset. Dr. Robin went on to say that Jen Eyre found the strength to act because she believed that her suspicions about her husband's character were correct. However, when she became suicidal and lost hope in life, she became more dangerous. It seemed that she had arranged everything to make her husband suffer. In a TV interview with Dr. Ozark, Mark shared a shocking revelation. Jen Eyre had written a 15-page letter, confessing that if he had walked in on the crime scene, she would have killed him as well. He acknowledged that he had hurt Jen Eyre, and his greatest regret was making her feel trapped and without options. He deeply wished he could travel back in time and erase the hurt he had caused. He confessed that his love for Jen Eyre had remained strong and never disappeared. Mark explained that he drove by Meredith's house multiple times as a way to cope with his emotions and come to terms with what had happened, helping him to process his feelings and move on. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Wang Nan. Wang Nan, born in 1987 in Nanjing, China, a major city and former capital, Wang Nan grew up in a relatively affluent family. Her parents provided her with the best possible education and encouraged her to develop her talents. After completing her secondary education, Wang Nan enrolled in a prestigious university, where she studied business and finance, and also learned several foreign languages. Upon graduation, she landed a job at a large travel agency, where she quickly proved herself to be a valuable, responsible, and motivated employee. Her career advanced rapidly, and she was soon sent to Thailand to head a new branch and oversee its development. Wang Nan worked as a top manager for several years before deciding to leave the agency to start her own business. She opened a Chinese restaurant in Bangkok, which she managed successfully, and it eventually grew into a small but popular chain. Wang Nan was a thriving young entrepreneur who had devoted her life to her career. With her constant business engagements, she barely had time for socializing or dating, and her loneliness became a normal part of her life. At almost 30 years old, Wang Nan was well established in Thailand, having lived there for a while and become proficient in the language. However, she strived for further improvement, taking additional courses to learn Thai at a training center. There, she met a young man named Yu Xiaodong, who initially stared at her before introducing himself in his native language. They exchanged brief conversations, and he inquired about her reason for studying the language. Wang Nan replied that it was for business purposes, and Yu Xiaodong proposed exchanging business cards to potentially meet up Sunday. Although Wang Nan was not interested in continuing the conversation, she still politely gave him her business card. Yu Xiaodong also gave Wang Nan his own business card, which said that he worked in the import-export industry in Bangkok. Not very impressed, Wang Nan put the business card in her wallet and forgot about it. Yu Xiaodong was the only one who showed genuine interest in Wang Nan, and he wasted no time in calling her the very next day. However, she was preoccupied with work and couldn't spare even a few minutes to talk, so she declined his invitation to meet for coffee. A few days later, Yu Xiaodong asked her out again, but Wang Nan turned him down once more, citing her busy schedule and preparations for an upcoming business conference where she hoped to expand her professional network. Undeterred, Yu Xiaodong showed up at the conference with a stunning bouquet of flowers and waited for Wang Nan to become available. When she was free, he approached her and asked her out once more. This time, Wang Nan was charmed by his persistence, which was a new experience for her. No one had ever pursued her so relentlessly before, so she agreed to meet him for dinner. As it turned out, Yu Xiaodong's interest in Wang Nan was more than just a passing infatuation. He was completely smitten. He showered her with attention, surprise gifts, and romantic gestures, including sending flowers to her doorstep every morning with sweet notes attached. He also called her at least twice a day to wish her good morning and good night. Wang Nan had mixed emotions about the situation. While she was irritated by Yu Xiaodong's all-consuming infatuation, she was also flattered that someone was making such an effort to win her heart. As a result, she found herself unexpectedly entering into a romantic relationship. Yu Xiaodong went out of his way to woo her, not only romantically but also by trying to be perfect in every aspect of their relationship. He shared her interests and opinions, learned to cook her favorite meals, and planned exciting activities for them to enjoy together. He was also eager to help her with her work and household chores at a moment's notice. Wang Nan was over the moon with happiness, feeling as though she was living in a fairy tale. Yu Xiaodong's behavior, however, was moving at a breakneck pace. Despite having only been together for a few months, he was already making plans for their wedding and discussing potential names for their future children. This made Wang Nan uncomfortable, but Yu Xiaodong would counter by pointing out that they were both in their 30s and that it was time for them to start thinking about building a family. That night, Yu Xiaodong wrote a heartfelt letter to Wang Nan, expressing his deep affection and commitment to being a good husband and father. The next morning, he arrived at her doorstep with a bouquet of flowers, reiterating his seriousness about marrying her. Wang Nan jokingly mentioned that the courthouse wouldn't open for another hour and a half, but Yu Xiaodong suggested they go there immediately. To her surprise, the courthouse was open, and the officer responsible for registering marriages was already at his desk, ready to formalize their union. Yu Xiaodong had secretly arranged for a hasty marriage ceremony to take place early in the morning. The whole event was unusual and lacking in formality. There were no guests, no exchange of rings, no wedding dress or veil, and no commemorative photographs. Wang Nan couldn't shake the feeling that the whole thing wasn't really happening, especially since she hadn't even introduced her new husband to her mother, with whom she was extremely close. Before she knew it, she was holding a marriage certificate in her hand, and her newlywed husband was standing beside her, beaming with satisfaction. Wang Man's marriage was troubled from the start. She had second thoughts about marrying Yu Xiaodong almost immediately after the wedding. Initially, she had hoped he would be a reliable partner, a man she could depend on. Unfortunately, her expectations were not met, and her new husband's true nature soon revealed itself. Yu Xiaodong spent most of his time at home playing video games, using his wife's money without contributing to their household expenses. Whenever his wife asked him why he wasn't working, he claimed his business was slow due to seasonal fluctuations and that he was just taking a break. However, her suspicions grew as time passed, and she decided to investigate his business. Her findings shocked her. His supposedly successful import-export company existed only on paper and business cards. One man was horrified, realizing too late that she should have had a prenuptial agreement. Now, her husband could freely spend her earnings, and if they divorced, he would claim her assets. During a tense conversation, Yu Xiaodong broke down in tears, promising to turn his life around and find a good job. However, it soon became apparent that he had no intention of looking for work and was content to rely on his wife's support. Yu Xiaodong, a grown man, consistently acted like a child. He spent most of his time playing computer games and expected his wife, Wang Nan, to pay for his personal expenses whenever he helped out around the house or assisted her at the restaurant. Wang Nan eventually had enough and told him she would no longer give him money unless he got a job. The next day, Yu Xiaodong disappeared, taking their marriage certificate and Wang Nan's identity card with him. Wang Nan only discovered the missing documents that evening when her accountant called to inquire about a large transfer of funds from her account. She was shocked, as she had not authorized the transfer. However, she immediately suspected her husband's involvement. It turned out that Yu Xiaodong had transferred more than $500,000 into his own account, using the stolen documents to deceive the bank into thinking it was their joint decision to transfer their shared money. Wang Nan quickly reported the theft to the police, who tracked down Yu Xiaodong a few hours later as he attempted to withdraw some of the stolen money. Confronted by the police and his wife, Xiaodong broke down and begged for forgiveness on his knees. He confessed to losing a large sum of money through gambling, which had led to threats of death and demands to repay the debt. This was not his first brush with the law, as he had previously served an 8-year prison sentence for robbery in his home country of China. One man was consumed by shame as she learned the truth about her husband's past. Despite this, she believed that his addiction to gambling was a disease that could be overcome, and she wanted to help him recover and return to a normal life. To support him, Wang Nan agreed to pay off half of his debt and offered him a job as heater of one of her restaurants. Initially, Yu Xiaodong appeared to be grateful for the opportunity and took his new role seriously. He even developed a promising strategy for the restaurant's growth. However, his enthusiasm was short-lived. Before long, he began to spend more time playing computer games and indulging in other leisure activities. Meanwhile, Wang Man discovered she was pregnant and shared the news with her husband. Yu Xiaodong initially expressed reservations about the pregnancy, and in a moment of hesitation, asked his wife to consider an abortion, which she flatly refused. The disagreement escalated to the point where he threatened divorce and division of their property, but eventually, his demeanor softened, and he apologized for his rash words. Yu Xiaodong later admitted that his outburst was driven by emotional anxiety, but ultimately, he was happy about the impending arrival of their child. However, things took a dramatic turn 2 months later. During a fateful trip, Yu Xiaodong suggested that his wife purchase life insurance, citing the pregnancy as a reason to safeguard her well-being and that of their unborn child in the event of any unforeseen circumstances. This seemingly caring gesture came after a period of harmony in their marriage, where he had been attentive, supportive, and diligent in his role as a husband and expectant father. Wang Nan quickly agreed to her husband's suggestion and even wondered why she hadn't thought of it herself. They purchased insurance the very next day. A couple of weeks later, Yu Xiaodong proposed a vacation to help them relax and unwind. Wang Nan was initially hesitant, but her husband was insistent. He pointed out that they had never had a honeymoon and that traveling with a baby would be difficult in the coming years. He also felt that they needed a break to clear their minds of the stress and negativity they had been experiencing. Wang Nan was eventually won over by her husband's arguments and agreed to the trip. He took charge of planning the entire vacation, choosing the destination, booking the hotel, and organizing activities that would be enjoyable and educational, yet not too strenuous for Wang Nan's pregnant state. Wang Nan was happy to leave the planning to her husband and was pleased to see how much effort he was putting into making their vacation special. On June 7th, they visited the park for the first time and spent most of the day exploring its many beautiful sights and lookouts. However, as the summer evening wore on, the park became increasingly crowded, with tourists everywhere. As the sun began to set, Wang Nan noticed that her husband, Yu Xiaodong, was growing angry and nervous. When she asked him what was wrong, he explained that the crowds were ruining their chance to enjoy a romantic sunset in peace. Despite his initial frustration, Yu Xiaodong tried to make the most of the situation, suggesting that they could still have a romantic moment as the sun set. As the park began to clear out, he climbed the fence of the observation deck and called out to his wife, Wang Nan, to join him, promising her an incredible view. However, Wang declined, citing the darkness and potential danger. Yu Xiaodong became angry but eventually returned to his wife, suggesting that they should come back to the park another time to watch the sunrise together. The Wang Nan and Yu Xiaodong returned to their hotel late on Saturday night, so they decided to sleep in and head back to the reserve early on Sunday morning. As planned, they woke up at 3 a.m. on June 9th and left for the national park while it was still dark outside. Their goal was to catch the first rays of the rising sun. When they arrived, they found the park nearly empty, with hardly any other visitors. They watched the sunrise together on an observation deck. Then, Yu Xiaodong encouraged his wife, Wang Nan, to join him at the cliff's edge to see some ancient rock paintings. Initially hesitant, Wang Nan trusted her husband's assurance that he would help her climb down and back up safely. As they took in the breathtaking view, Yu Xiaodong suddenly asked Wang Nan if she regretted anything in life. She replied that she did not. However, in a shocking turn of events, Yu Xiaodong's demeanor changed. He touched his wife's hair, kissed her cheek, whispered "die" in her ear, and then pushed her off the cliff. To avoid detection, he checked their surroundings to make sure no one had witnessed the incident. Looking down, he couldn't see where Wang Nan had fallen, and the silence indicated that there were no witnesses below. Yu Xiaodong calmly walked towards the park exit, planning to report the incident after his wife was surely dead. However, hikers who had wandered off the trail spotted Wang Nan's body on the rocks and immediately called for rescue, reporting the incident. As Yu Xiaodong was leaving the reserve, several emergency vehicles sped past him, sirens blaring. Realizing what was happening, he quickly returned to the scene, pretending to be distressed. There, he put on a convincing performance, crying and begging for help. Convinced that his wife was dead and no one would discover the truth, he remained unaware that Wang Nan's fall had been broken by tree branches, which reduced her speed before she landed on bushes and then rolled onto the rocks. This series of events cushioned the impact, saving her life and that of their child, although she suffered severe injuries. Yu Xiaodong was overcome with grief, crying and lamenting the loss of his wife and child. However, his wife suddenly regained consciousness and attempted to speak, but was unable to. The people around her noticed the genuine horror on Yu Xiaodong's face, but he quickly composed himself and leaned in close to his wife. In a hushed tone, he warned her in Chinese to remain silent if she wanted to survive. Wang Nan's injuries were severe, including head trauma, multiple fractures, lacerations, soft tissue contusions, ruptured internal organs, and massive blood loss. Her spine was also severely damaged, leaving doctors concerned that even if she survived, she would likely be paralyzed and never walk again. Wang Nan spent several days in a coma, connected to life support machines, during which time her husband remained by her side constantly. However, despite his devoted appearance, Yu Xiaodong's intentions were sinister. Every time he was alone with his wife, he thought about how to complete the job without arousing suspicion. His actions were a ruse, hiding his true intentions behind a mask of love and devotion that he examined the devices, but couldn't find a way to quietly disable them. Wang Nan slowly regained consciousness. When she did, her husband was beside himself with fear. He stayed with her constantly, terrified that she would reveal the truth to the police at any moment. When they were alone, he threatened her again, saying he had nothing to lose. During the initial police interrogation, the Wang Nan supported her husband's claim that her fall was caused by dizziness. However, when her husband briefly left the room, Wang Nan asked the nurse to call the police again and prevent her husband from re-entering. It was then that she recounted the disturbing story of her fall, alleging that her husband had attempted to kill her. Yu Xiaodong suddenly burst into the room, shouting that his wife was delusional due to her head injury and that he would never harm her or their baby. His explanation was not believable, and he was arrested on the same day. At the hospital, he was charged with multiple crimes, including attempted murder and intimidation, after her husband was taken into custody and sent to jail to await trial. Wang Nan finally felt a sense of relief. Although she still had a long and difficult recovery ahead of her, she now felt safe. Wang Nan initially held on to hope that her pregnancy could be saved, despite the severe fall. However, her medical team advised her to terminate the pregnancy due to the large amounts of painkillers and antibiotics she was receiving, as well as the multiple surgeries she underwent under general anesthesia. The doctors prioritized Wang Nan's life, warning her that the fetus was unlikely to survive the strong medications. This news came as a devastating shock to Wang Nan, but she ultimately followed the doctor's advice. During the trial, Yu Xiaodong vehemently denied any wrongdoing, sticking to his claim that the incident was an accident. He remained calm and composed in prison, hiring skilled lawyers and expressing confidence that he would either be acquitted or receive a lenient sentence. In contrast, the investigators and prosecutor were convinced that Yu Xiaodong had deliberately committed the crime. Motivated by the prospect of collecting a substantial insurance payout and inheriting his wife's fortune, which was valued at nearly $2.5 million at the time. During an interrogation, Yu Xiaodong made a shocking revelation about his motive for the heinous crime. He disclosed that he was angry with his wife for not paying off his entire debt, which had accumulated due to his gambling habit. In his mind, if his wife truly loved him, she would have cleared all his debts since she had the financial means to do so. This perceived betrayal led Yu Xiaodong to believe that his wife did not love him, and therefore, he felt justified in punishing her. After making this astonishing confession, the defendant became silent, seemingly aware that he had revealed too much. He attempted to retract his statement, claiming that he had been misunderstood. Nevertheless, his unexpected admission, combined with Wang Nan's testimony, was sufficient to secure a lengthy prison sentence. In March 2021, Yu Xiaodong was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment. However, he and his lawyers filed multiple appeals, and 6 months later, the Thai court showed unusual leniency by reducing the life sentence to 10 years in prison. Wang Nan and her family were shocked and outraged by the lenient sentence given to Yu Xiaodong, believing it would set a bad precedent and encourage others to commit similar heinous crimes. Yu Xiaodong received a sentence of 10 years for attempting to murder his pregnant Wang Nan. As of now, Yu Xiaodong is serving her 10-year sentence while Wang Nan is challenging the court's decision. Meanwhile, Yu Xiaodong is filing appeals to prove her innocence. Wang Nan has successfully restarted her business in 2023 and also established an organization that provides support to women who have been affected by domestic violence. She writes about her personal experiences and warnings for women on her blog. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Adam Strong. Adam Strong was born in 1972 in Cornwall, a small town in Stormont County, Ontario. Little is known about his family and early life. He remained single and childless, working as a gas station attendant and a security guard on film sets. Those who knew him described Adam as quirky and eccentric, often coming across as superior to others. He enjoyed debating and arguing to prove his point, but was not typically confrontational. A review of his social media profiles revealed Adam's interest in BDSM practices, which he openly discussed and shared photos and videos about. Although he never had a long-term partner, some former partners accused him of being a sadist who subjected them to physical and emotional abuse, leading to the end of their relationships. Adam also had a peculiar hobby of writing reviews of adult films and magazines. It appeared that watching such content was a significant part of his free time. Despite his unusual interests, Adam presented himself as a calm and composed individual, showing no outward signs of a troubled or criminal nature. The story took an unexpected turn 4 months later when at the end of December, when David Wood's family moved into the house at 19 Macmillan Drive in Oshawa, they were immediately struck by a strange and unpleasant smell. Their downstairs neighbor, Adam Strong, a 45-year-old single man who lived in the other half of the house, reassured them that it was just a minor plumbing issue that he would fix within a few days. Although Adam was friendly and polite in his communication, there was something unsettling about him that put the Wood family on edge. When David's wife tried to welcome him with some homemade cookies, Adam wouldn't even let her into his apartment. Instead, he stepped out into the hallway, closing his door behind him. In that brief moment, David's wife caught a glimpse of Adam's living space, which was in disarray, and the smell inside was overpowering and foul. Adam borrowed cookies from his new neighbor and quickly left. Later, when they met in the yard, he apologized for not inviting her in, explaining that his apartment was a mess due to upcoming renovations. Despite his efforts to be polite, he seemed nervous. As the Wood family settled into their new home, they tried to ignore a persistent smell. However, on December 29th, they called a plumber to fix a sewer blockage, which had intensified the stench. The problem seemed minor, but what the workers found in the pipes shocked even experienced forensic experts. Plumber Sean Funn and his partner began to clear the blockage in the Woods' apartment. Although they were accustomed to unpleasant odors, they were surprised by the terrible smell inside. They soon realized they needed to investigate further and descended to the apartment below, which belonged to a man named Adam. Adam reluctantly let the workers in, apologizing for the mess. The smell was even worse in his apartment, and when the plumbers reached the source of the blockage, the stench became unbearable. Sean, a seasoned plumber, had never encountered anything as foul-smelling as this in his years of practice. However, an even more disturbing discovery awaited him and his team when they decided to clear the pipe. Adam, already on edge, became increasingly agitated, refusing to step away and bombarding the workers with questions about their methods and estimated time of completion. He later claimed he was simply curious, having never witnessed this process before. The specialists tried to brush off his behavior, but their efforts were soon overshadowed by the gruesome discovery of over 10 kilograms of flesh, hair, and bone fragments in the pipes. Sean was horrified to find disfigured and partially decomposed human fingers among the debris. Adam feigned surprise, claiming he had never seen anything so disgusting. and then asked the plumbers if they had any idea how this could have ended up in the sewer pipe. Sean decided to call the police immediately to report the disturbing discovery. He informed them that he had likely found human remains and provided the address. He made sure Adam didn't touch or disturb anything, preserving the evidence. When the officers arrived, they quickly confirmed that Sean's suspicions were correct. Human flesh had been extracted from the pipes. The police then spoke with the Adam. He admitted that a woman's body had been stuck in the pipe. He even revealed that other body parts were stored in his refrigerator's freezer. Upon investigation, the police found a severed head and limb fragments packed in plastic bags, which were too large. The house was extremely filthy and cluttered, with a kitchen filled with dirty dishes and rotting food, as well as trash covering the floor. Empty pizza boxes were scattered around, and numerous magazines of an explicit and masochistic nature were present among the mess. Various adult toys, gags, whips, handcuffs, and restraint devices were also discovered. Adam Strong was arrested at the scene and taken to the police station for questioning. His arrest puzzled the authorities, as he had no prior run-ins with the law and was not a person of interest to the police. Mr. Adam had resided at 19 McMillan Drive in Oshawa for over 10 years, dating back to 2007, without incident or complaints from neighbors. The House of Horrors at 19 McMillan Drive, Adam's residence, was secured and guarded as a crime scene. An initial inspection revealed a complex and time-consuming process lay ahead, with investigators expecting to uncover more shocking evidence. The discovery of a head in the refrigerator was just the beginning. Evidence found at the scene led law enforcement to suspect a connection to Rory Hash, whose torso had been recovered from a body of water 4 months earlier. A tattoo on the neck and subsequent DNA analysis confirmed that the discovered remains belonged to Rory. Further investigation revealed blood-stained clothing and shoes belonging to she, hidden among trash in various rooms of the house. The bedroom was particularly disturbing, with blood traces found on the bed, walls, furniture, and ceiling. These bloodstains were later confirmed to belong to a missing schoolgirl. A dissection table was also found in the kitchen, suggesting it was used to dismember and gut the victim. The entire scene was gruesome, with blood, skin particles, hair, and bone fragments scattered everywhere, causing nausea in those who witnessed it. The bathroom was extremely dirty and unsanitary, with signs of a violent crime visible everywhere, including dirt, blood, and broken fixtures. The toilet was dismantled and lay in a corner, surrounded by garbage. It appeared that the perpetrator, Adam, had attempted to dispose of a body by cutting it into pieces and flushing them down the sewer. However, he encountered a blockage and, when his attempt to fix it failed, left the scene in disarray. Inside the house, a large number of sharp objects were discovered, which likely had been used to dismember the victim. Some of the objects, including knives, still had blood on them. Further analysis of the evidence, including DNA samples, revealed that Adam had semen on fragments of the victim's body, which had been found in the refrigerator. Rory Hash was born on July 9, 1999, in Oshawa, Ontario, to Shannon Dion, a single mother. Rory's father was not present in her life, having left before her birth. Despite this, Rory grew up in a loving and supportive family environment provided by her mother and maternal grandmother. Rory's family had an unconventional background, with her maternal grandfather founding and leading the motorcycle club Satan's Choice. He was also a skilled boxer with connections to organized crime. Additionally, Rory's uncle was a member of the Hells Angels motorcycle club and led a troubled life, frequently encountering legal issues. However, this did not affect Rory's childhood, which was remarkably peaceful and carefree. Rory excelled academically and had a passion for dance, winning awards in competitions. Those who knew her described her as intelligent, responsible, and compassionate. At the age of 13, Rory earned top honors as a cadet in her local army unit, showcasing her exceptional qualities from a young age. At 15, Rory's life took a downward turn. A friend introduced her to drugs, and she quickly became addicted. She started spending time with the wrong crowd, neglected her schoolwork, and eventually stopped attending school altogether. For about a year, her family tried to help her overcome her addiction by sending her to various treatment centers, but she relapsed each time. At 17, Rory ran away from home and began working in the sex trade to support her habit. Rory eventually sought help from a specialized service for teenagers struggling with addiction. With their support, she was able to enter mandatory treatment and turn her life around. She found a job at a local shop, studied remotely to earn her high school diploma, and even started thinking about attending college. Rory also started a serious relationship with a boy named Anthony, and they decided to move in together in the spring of 2017. When Rory discovered she was pregnant, she was nearly 18 and felt ready to take on the responsibility of motherhood. Her mother supported her decision, but was unaware that Rory had started using illicit substances again. In mid-August, Rory met with Crane at a shopping center. Crane had been keeping an eye on her for 18 months to ensure she didn't fall back into her old habits. During their meeting, Rory revealed that she had started using drugs again and had lost her job a month prior. She also admitted to exchanging intimate favors for money or drugs. Crane was deeply concerned and promised to help. He asked Rory to wait while he made a call to arrange for her to be hospitalized. However, when he returned, Rory was gone. The next day, Rory's mother and uncle took her to the hospital after finding her in a state of incoherence due to substance use. They left her in the emergency room queue for about an hour, but when they returned, Rory was nowhere to be found. Security footage showed that she had simply gotten up and walked out of the hospital. Her family reported her missing the following day, but despite a thorough search and widespread social media attention, Rory was never seen again. Rory's exact circumstances of arrival at Adam's house are unknown, but it is probable that she went there seeking drugs in exchange for sex. The investigation started when Adam informed the police about the location of Rory's remaining body parts. Initially, investigators anticipated Adam would admit to the crime, but when he was taken to the station, he became uncooperative, refused to answer questions, and denied any involvement in Rory's death, all while remaining calm. The only charge filed against Adam was desecration of a body, as there was not enough direct evidence to link him to the murder. Despite his lawyer's efforts, Adam was not granted bail and stayed in jail until his trial. Investigators attempted to get Adam to reveal more information by provoking an emotional response, but he remained cautious and avoided discussing Rory's visit to his house and his potential involvement in her death. However, Adam freely talked about his interest in bladed weapons and his large collection of knives. A search of Adam's house uncovered a significant piece of evidence, a dirty hunting knife hidden in a closet with dried skin fragments that appeared to be human. DNA testing revealed that the samples on the knife did not match Rory's, but belonged to someone else. It took several months to identify the person, but by July 2017, investigators had confirmed that the DNA on the knife belonged to Candace Fitzpatrick, she who had gone missing about 10 years earlier. Candace shared many similarities with Rory Hash. Both struggled with addiction and had run-ins with the law. They came from troubled families and often ran away from home, sometimes disappearing for months at a time. To survive, they would often exchange sex for food and other necessities. Candace was born in 1989 and was 18 when she disappeared. Her family did not realize she was missing until almost 2 years later, by which time any potential leads had gone cold. Many people believe that Candace's lifestyle and social circle meant she could have gone anywhere. For 10 years, her parents thought she might have run away and would eventually return home. However, news from law enforcement in 2018 destroyed their hope of ever seeing their daughter alive again. A striking feature of the case was the physical resemblance between Candace and another victim, who was the same age. The police believed they had caught a serial offender. The suspect, Adam, also confessed to harming Candace. However, Adam refused to provide information about Rory unless the police agreed to improve his prison conditions. He wanted a private cell, a large TV, internet, and his favorite meals. Although law enforcement was outraged by Adam's demands, they agreed in order to gain valuable information. Adam began by sharing his troubled childhood, revealing that he was abused by his stepfather from age 5 and started harming animals at age 7, deriving physical pleasure from these acts. He also discussed his unusual intimate preferences and expressed frustration at not finding a partner who shared these interests. When discussing Rory, Adam described in detail how he had dismembered her, seemingly taking pleasure in the act, but later regretted his plumbing had failed him. However, when questioned by police, Adam denied responsibility for her death, claiming she had died from an overdose and he had only disposed of the body. When asked about Candace, a case from 10 years prior, Adam was caught off guard and attempted to learn how the police had discovered the connection. Upon hearing about the human remains found on an old knife, Adam became subdued and regretted not taking better precautions to avoid detection. He admitted to meeting Candace but denied killing her. Despite a lack of evidence to support his claims, Adam unintentionally incriminated himself during the investigation. In an attempt to gain sympathy, he shared his account of events. However, when informed that the victim, Rory, was pregnant at the time of her death, Adam strongly denied this fact. The police noted that the pregnancy was in its early stages, and therefore not visibly apparent. Adam claimed that he would have noticed if she was pregnant, sparking a realization among the investigators that he would stop at nothing to argue his point. To uncover more information, the police told Adam that Rory was pregnant, which led him to attempt to prove the contrary. In his eagerness to refute this, he shared graphic details about how he had personally examined her body and held her reproductive organs in his hands. Adam's account was detailed and included his physical sensations, describing the flesh as soft and warm. At one point, he even mentioned feeling a pulse. These statements raised suspicions that Rory may have still been alive at the time. Unfortunately for Adam, his entire narrative was captured on camera, and his incriminating statements were presented as evidence in court. When confronted about his earlier statements, Adam tried to retract his previous admissions, but it was too late. The defendant, Adam Strong, refused to reveal what he had done with Candace's body, and despite extensive searches, her remains were never found. Investigators also failed to identify any other potential victims. During one of the final interrogations, Strong showed no remorse, saying, "I don't know if it matters, but I'd like to extend my condolences to her parents." During the trial, Strong's lawyers argued that he was mentally ill and therefore not responsible for his actions, claiming he needed medical treatment rather than punishment. However, the court had to decide whether he was sane and accountable for his crimes or if he should be committed to a psychiatric facility instead of serving time in prison. A psychiatric evaluation found that although Strong had certain mental health disorders, he was aware of his actions and could be held legally responsible. Strong's trial began in September 2020, 3 years after Rory's death and 12 years after Candace disappeared. He was charged with 2 counts of murder and desecration of Rory's remains. Although he never admitted guilt, the evidence found in his home and his statements during interrogations confirmed his involvement in these horrific crimes. 4 of Adam's former partners testified against him, describing his cruel and violent behavior. The prosecution presented evidence that Adam had lured 2 women to his home with promises of money in exchange for intimate services that catered to his specific preferences. Once they were in his home, he would immobilize and torment them for an extended period. In the case of Rory, He likely killed her during the ordeal because he feared she would report him to the police. On September 4th, a signal from Adam's phone was detected near the city harbor, where he had discarded Rory's torso, hoping the current would carry it away. In April 2021, Adam Strong was found guilty of murdering Candace Fitzpatrick and Rory Hash, as well as desecrating Rory's remains. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Adam showed little remorse, stating that his prison cell was an improvement over his previous living conditions. 6 months after his sentencing, Adam unexpectedly revealed the location of Candace's remains. Following his directions, the police conducted a months-long search that ultimately led to the discovery of human bones. DNA testing confirmed the skeleton's identity as young Candace Fitzpatrick, and this was officially announced. Investigators now strongly suspect that there may be at least one more female victim in the Adam case. During Adam's initial interrogation, his personal belongings were seized, including a chain with 3 rings. Adam asked for the chain's return, explaining that the rings held sentimental value and he didn't want to lose them. Relatives of Rory and Candace later identified 2 of the rings as belonging to their daughters, but the origin of the 3rd ring remains unknown. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Lindsay Cutshall. Lindsay Cutshall was born in 1982 in the small town of White Eyes, Ohio, to a devoutly Christian family. Her father was a pastor, and she was raised with strong religious values. Despite her strict upbringing, Lindsay was an adventurous and active child who enjoyed sports and later developed a passion for hiking and extreme tourism. After completing her education, Lindsay attended Appalachian Bible College in West Virginia, where she honed her outdoor skills. She regularly went on hikes, climbed mountains, and rafted down rivers, often organizing her own expeditions. Lindsay's dream was to establish a summer camp for children and teenagers, where she could teach them wilderness survival skills, rafting, and other outdoor activities. Jason Allen was born in 1978 in Zeeland, Michigan, to a deeply religious family. As a teenager, he became fascinated with hiking and wilderness survival. Jason was a tall, athletic, and charismatic individual who possessed natural leadership qualities, which drew like-minded people to him. He was passionate about exploring new heights and mastering outdoor skills. Lindsay and Jason met in 2002 during a hiking trip in the Appalachian Mountains. At the time, Lindsay was still a student, while Jason worked as a mountain guide and climbing instructor. They quickly formed a connection after meeting for the first time, leading the young man to ask for her hand in marriage just 6 months later. Both sets of parents gave their approval, and the young man proposed to his girlfriend with a beautiful diamond ring. Shortly after, he gave her a second engagement ring. As a couple, they made ambitious plans for their future. They intended to get married in September 2004 and buy a spacious house to raise a family. But things didn't turn out as expected. Before their wedding, they worked as senior counselors at a Christian summer camp called Rock and Water in California's El Dorado County. Their goal was to gain experience and eventually open their own camp after the wedding. On the Friday evening of August 14th, Lindsay and Jason decided to take a weekend trip to the San Francisco area. Before leaving, they informed their colleagues of their plans and left 2 experienced counselors in charge of the camp, ensuring a smooth transition. They told everyone they would return by Monday, expecting no issues for either themselves or their temporary replacements. With their plan in place, they set off in Lindsay's 1992 red Ford Tempo, and unfortunately, this was the last time anyone saw them alive. By Sunday evening, Jason and Lindsay, both counselors, had not returned to camp, but their absence did not raise immediate concern. It was assumed they would arrive late that night or early Monday. However, when they failed to appear at the Monday morning roll call at 8 a.m. and their phones were unreachable, their colleagues grew worried. The group quickly notified the police and then reached out to Jason and Lindsay's families to inform them about the situation. The parents went to the camp right away to get more information about the incident. Their colleagues were particularly concerned because Jason and Lindsay were known for their reliability and punctuality. If they had encountered any issues, they would have likely found a way to communicate. Upon arriving at the camp, law enforcement officials began questioning their colleagues, but the investigation quickly hit a roadblock. No one knew exactly where Jason and Lindsay had gone. They had planned to explore the San Francisco area, but their love for adventure and extreme activities made it likely that they were in a remote location with no access to communication or civilization. The police decided to wait for 48 hours, allowing the missing couple a window to possibly return home by themselves. In the meantime, concerned relatives and friends didn't want to delay any longer, and therefore decided to start searching. They reached out to everyone in their network, trying to gather information about the last time someone had contact with they. A missing person flyer featuring a photo of they was circulated, asking witnesses to report any potential sightings right away. By Tuesday, law enforcement had joined the search. The main focus was on the San Francisco area, its surrounding suburbs, and nearby localities. However, the large terrain made it challenging to thoroughly search every inch. A friend's insight that they frequently visited the secluded and picturesque rocky beaches led the police to concentrate on these locations. As the search effort dragged on for days, with several bodies found in sleeping bags in the targeted areas, the likelihood of finding they alive decreased significantly. On Wednesday, August 19th, a helicopter patrol spotted 2 bodies in sleeping bags on a remote rocky beach, indicating that the individuals were likely deceased rather than just resting. Upon arriving at the scene, police found a red Ford Tempo parked near a tourist shelter and a steep trail leading to a scenic beach. The car was identified as belonging to missing student Lindsay Cutshall after a database check. As officers descended the trail, they discovered 2 people in sleeping bags, who initially appeared to be sleeping. However, they did not respond to calls or noise. Closer inspection revealed that the individuals, a young man and woman, were deceased, with no signs of life. Preliminary examination suggested that they had been killed by gunshot wounds to the head, and the smell of decomposition indicated they had been there for over a day. All of their belongings, including phones, wallets, bank cards, and cash, were found next to them, ruling out robbery as a motive. The car keys were also visible, eliminating car theft as a motive. Investigators initially believed the deceased were the young couple who had gone missing near San Francisco the previous week. Documents found at the scene confirmed the identities of the victims as Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen. However, formal identification by their relatives was still necessary. When the parents arrived, they were overcome with grief upon recognizing the bodies of their children. The investigation led police to rule out initial theories of robbery or carjacking due to the presence of untouched valuables, money, and keys at the scene. Forensic analysis also showed no signs of physical or intimate assault on the bodies, except for the fatal gunshot wounds to the head. It appeared that Lindsay and Jason were peacefully sleeping and did not have time to react to the attack. They showed no signs of trying to defend themselves, escape, or even get out of their sleeping bags, indicating a sudden and deliberate act that was similar to an execution or a revenge killing. The brutal murder of 2 individuals on a secluded beach left investigators with many questions but no clear answers. The beach was difficult to access, and there were no signs of anyone else being in the area. Despite a thorough search, no shell casings were found, leading investigators to believe that the shooter may have taken them or thrown them into the ocean. The fact that the shots were fired at close range into the victim's head suggested that the casings should have been nearby if they hadn't been deliberately moved. A search of the area revealed an empty beer bottle a few meters from the crime scene. This was notable because Lindsay and Jason did not drink alcohol and led a healthy lifestyle, suggesting that the bottle may have belonged to the shooter. The brand of beer was unusual for the area and was more commonly found in a neighboring state. Although it was unclear whether the bottle was connected to the crime, it was considered a significant lead in the investigation. A theory emerged that Lindsay and Jason may have had a confrontation with someone the day before their deaths, and this person may have returned at night with a gun to settle the dispute. Although Jason and Lindsay were known for being friendly, it was possible they may have unknowingly offended someone. Additionally, the shooter may have been intoxicated or mentally unstable. Examination of the bullets found in the victim's skulls showed they came from a rare Marlin rifle, specifically a .45 caliber Model 18, produced in 1994 by Marlin Firearms Company. This type of rifle was typically used for hunting and was often part of a collector's arsenal. This discovery was a significant lead in the investigation, but it remained the only concrete clue at the time. Investigation suggested that the shooter was likely a lone male. He may have been a hunter, collector, or gun enthusiast. To further the investigation, authorities aimed to reconstruct their final route, identify who they may have contacted, and determine when they were last seen alive. Fortunately, they had taken many photos, and their camera was found intact among their belongings, which provided a useful starting point for tracking their movements. A guest book at a tourist cabin near the lookout point, where they had parked their car, contained entries expressing their delight with the weekend getaway. They had also visited a fishing pier about 20 miles away on Saturday, as evidenced by the photographs they took. Police officers returned to the pier and interviewed locals to find people who may have seen something significant. Several people remembered a young couple in a red car who inquired about overnight accommodations but found all 3 nearby hotels fully booked due to peak tourist season. They had dinner at a local restaurant, walked around the area, and took photos before leaving in the evening. According to those who saw and interacted with them, they was friendly, did not engage in any conflicts, and seemed carefree and happy. However, none of the witnesses could recall anything unusual or suspicious. The location where the bodies were found was a protected area, closed to camping. However, the young couple had nowhere else to stay overnight, so they decided to camp on the beach, using sleeping bags instead of a tent. They felt safe on the secluded beach on a warm August night and planned to return to the rock and water camp on Sunday. This information helped investigators narrow down the time frame of their deaths. Since they went to sleep but didn't survive until morning, it's likely they were killed between 11 p.m. on Saturday and dawn on Sunday. Despite the ongoing investigation and public appeals for information, police withheld certain details, including the results of the ballistics analysis. This action was taken to prevent the suspect from being tipped off and getting rid of the murder weapon before the investigation could start. The investigation first focused on a local homeless man who was known to sleep on the beach where the crime occurred. He was found and questioned by police, but despite not having an alibi for the night of the crime, he was not confirmed to be involved. The main reasons for this were that the murder weapon was never found and his DNA did not match the DNA found on a beer bottle discovered at the crime scene. The case went cold for nearly 2 years, but in the spring of 2006, police decided to release more information about the crime, including details about the weapon used. They also offered a $50,000 reward for any information that could help identify the perpetrator and solve the case. Following the public appeal, authorities received over 1,000 calls, but only a few were useful for the investigation. One individual, 26 years old Sean Gallen, drew particular attention from several locals who described him as an aggressive collector of firearms and blades. He was reportedly prone to conflicts, had a history of property damage, and frequently threatened violent behavior. The police investigated Sean Gallen and questioned him because they already knew him from previous incidents involving fights and drunk driving. Upon inspecting his possessions, Sean did possess numerous weapons but did not own the rifle in question. Authorities were unable to verify his whereabouts around the time of the crime due to the year gap, and his DNA did not match the sample found on the beer bottle at the crime scene, forcing his release. Meanwhile, international authorities were investigating another individual, 61 years old Joseph Henry Burgess, who made locals nervous due to his tendency to carry firearms and exhibit aggressive behavior. Burgess was described as erratic, often claiming he received orders from God, sparking suspicion that he could be the perpetrator. Joseph Burgess was living in Canada in the late 1970s, feeling lost and without a clear sense of purpose or direction in his life. In 1978, he joined the Children of God commune, presenting himself as a deeply devoted individual. Those around him considered him excessively zealous. A rivalry with two young members escalated into hostility, and shortly after, both individuals were found dead with multiple close-range gunshot wounds to the head. The circumstances of their deaths were particularly notable. Their bodies were discovered in sleeping bags on a beach, suggesting they were shot while asleep. By the time the authorities arrived, Joseph had disappeared. Although evidence left behind implicated him in the crime, he had already fled to the United States, crossing the border illegally. Joseph managed to evade capture for nearly 25 years until the police linked him to a double homicide in California. However, the opportunity to question him was lost when a shootout occurred during his arrest, resulting in the deaths of both a police sergeant and Joseph, who initiated the gunfire. This ultimately unresolved case remained shrouded in mystery. A 35-year-old man named Seamus Gallen was killed by his younger brother, Sean Gallen. The brothers had gotten into an argument, during which Sean, who was under the influence of illicit substances, shot Seamus 3 times with a gun. Sean had a history with the police, having been previously investigated for a double murder on a beach, but was released due to lack of evidence. Since then, Sean had been in trouble with the law twice for causing property damage and making threats, but only received fines. It was also discovered that Sean was an avid hunter and enjoyed making knives and other bladed weapons. People who knew him described him as antisocial, aggressive, and unpredictable. After killing his brother, Sean tried to run away but was caught almost immediately. The police decided to take another look at Sean's possible involvement in a crime that happened 13 years ago. They found useful information on his social media page, where he had posted pictures of his large collection of weapons and talked about his supposed psychic abilities. According to his posts, Sean believed he was on a special mission and was receiving instructions from outer space. Sean's behavior initially led police to suspect that he had serious mental health issues. He refused to cooperate with the investigation, spoke incoherently, and maintained his innocence. A new lead was found by investigators who examined private messages on the deceased brother's social media page, something no one anticipated. In 2006, a $50,000 reward had been offered for information about a double homicide case. Sean's former girlfriend had messaged his brother, suggesting that she could claim the reward by turning Sean in. It appeared that both the girlfriend and the brother had knowledge about the case, but they had chosen to remain silent. Unfortunately, it was no longer possible to question either of them, as the brother had been shot and the girlfriend had died in a car accident 2 years earlier. However, when Sean was shown the printouts of the messages between his former girlfriend and his brother, he made a shocking confession. Despite his initial denials, Sean began to provide a detailed account of the events surrounding the double homicide. His recollection of the details was vivid, even though more than 13 years had passed since the crime occurred. One evening, a man left his house with a Marlin rifle, planning to hunt in a nearby wooded area. However, after wandering aimlessly for a couple of hours, he decided to head down to a nearby beach, which he believed was a good spot to find wild boars. As he walked along the shore, he came across 2 sleeping bags with a young man and woman asleep inside. He stood there watching them for several minutes, when suddenly he heard voices in his head telling him to kill them. The man claimed that this was a mission from outer space that he had to carry out. So, he pointed his rifle directly at the young man's head and fired, instantly killing him. The sound of the shot woke she, but before she could even process what was happening, the man fired again, killing her as well. He then picked up the spent casings and put them in an empty beer can he had been carrying. Later, he threw the can into some bushes in his father's backyard, where he also hid the rifle, asking his father to keep it for him. Sean's father hid the murder weapon in the cellar of his old barn without asking any questions. Remarkably, Sean's account of the crime was later confirmed. When the barn eventually collapsed, the rifle was discovered at the site, and a beer can with shell casings was still hidden in the overgrown bushes in the backyard. The property's abandonment after Sean's father passed away in 2009 had helped preserve these key pieces of evidence. A beer bottle found on the beach was initially considered evidence, but it was later discovered to be unrelated to the crime. Sean claimed that voices in his head ordered him to commit violent acts and that he was not aware of his actions when he committed the crime. His defense argued that Sean was mentally ill and unfit to stand trial. The court relied on expert psychiatrists to assess the validity of these claims. The psychiatric evaluation found that Sean did indeed suffer from multiple mental health disorders, which were exacerbated by his use of alcohol and prohibited substances. However, the evaluation also showed that at the time of the crime, Sean acted with deliberation and careful planning, fully aware of his actions and the need to cover his tracks to avoid detection. Specifically, Sean deliberately killed the young man first, knowing that she would be less able to resist or defend herself if anything went wrong. Sean carefully removed the casings and handed the rifle to his father, instructing him to conceal it. Although psychiatrists diagnosed Sean with mental issues, they concluded he was mentally fit to stand trial and be held accountable for his actions. Notably, his family and former girlfriend were aware of or suspected his involvement in the double homicide, yet none of them reported him to the police. Sean's trial took place in the spring of 2019, nearly 15 years after the double homicide. On June 17, 2019, he was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms without parole, plus an additional 94 years for killing his brother in 2017. He is currently serving his sentence in a special prison unit for inmates with mental disorders. Due to his continued claims of hearing voices and aggressive behavior, he is closely monitored to prevent harm to himself or others. The motive behind the double homicide was never established. According to reports, Sean randomly encountered they sleeping on the beach and decided to end their lives without apparent reason. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ryan Poston. Ryan Poston was born on December 30, 1982, in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky, to Lisa and Jay Poston. He had a strong and loving bond with his 3 sisters, Allison, Catherine, and Elizabeth, throughout his life. Growing up, Ryan had the opportunity to travel extensively and attend schools in Switzerland and the Philippines. This exposure broadened his horizons and gave him an adventurous spirit. Ryan was also known for his striking good looks, which, coupled with his charismatic personality, made him stand out in a crowd. After graduating from high school, Ryan attended Indiana University, where he earned a degree in political science, history, and geography. He excelled academically and graduated with honors in 2005. Following in the footsteps of his family members, Ryan pursued a career in law. He enrolled in the Salmon P. Chase College of Law at Northern Kentucky University. Driven by his admiration for the legal profession, his esteemed grandfather and uncle, both practicing attorneys, were his role models. Ryan's ultimate goal was to own a successful law firm. While in Cincinnati, Ohio, Ryan dedicated himself to helping people who couldn't afford expensive lawyers. Despite being young, he had already built a strong reputation, and many sought his advice. He worked hard to ensure everyone had access to fair and competent legal representation, regardless of their financial situation. After a painful breakup in 2011, Ryan turned to his cousin Carissa for comfort and support. During a visit to Lexington, Kentucky to spend time with her, he met Shayna Hubers, a Lexington native, and his life took an unexpected turn. Shayna Hubers embodied the quintessential Southern girl, renowned for her outgoing personality and effortless ability to form friendships. Her warm and charming demeanor naturally drew people to her. After graduating high school in 2009 with a full scholarship, she continued her education at the University of Kentucky, majoring in psychology, before pursuing her master's degree in psychology at Eastern Kentucky University. Despite their 8-year age gap, Ryan was 29, while Shayna was just 21. Their feelings for each other grew increasingly undeniable. With each visit Ryan made to see his cousin Carissa in Lexington, he found himself devoting more time to Shayna. As they spent more time together, their bond deepened. Shayna began spending more time in Highland Heights, the Kentucky suburb where Ryan lived. Every weekend, she would pack a bag and visit Ryan's home, dedicating herself to taking care of him, cooking his meals, and cleaning his living space. As time went on, Ryan and Shayna's relationship grew stronger, and he took her to meet his parents. She was over the moon with excitement, telling her friends all about Ryan and even saying she wanted to become Mrs. Ryan Poston. But their promising future came to a tragic end on October 12, 2012. In a panicked call to the police, Shayna admitted to fatally shooting her boyfriend, Ryan. The details she shared revealed a devastating scene of domestic violence that had spun out of control. According to Shayna, Ryan had tried to physically abuse her, dragging her out of the house when she attempted to gather her belongings. She told the 911 dispatcher that Ryan had confronted her with a gun, leading to a physical fight. In the heat of the moment, Shayna managed to grab the gun, but she was intimidated by Ryan's size. In a state of panic, she pulled the trigger, ultimately shooting Ryan. Shayna admitted that she believed Ryan's death was inevitable, so she claimed she wanted to end his suffering. She told the 911 dispatcher that Ryan was in distress, making unusual sounds, which motivated her to shoot him several more times. Afterwards, she revealed that she left the gun on a bookshelf. Minutes after Shayna called 911 to report that she had shot her boyfriend, officers were sent to the scene. When they arrived, they told Shayna to come out of the apartment with her hands up. At first, she was hesitant, but she eventually followed their orders. As she walked out, they told her to lie face down on the ground. It was clear that Shayna was very upset as she complied with their instructions. After the officers handcuffed Shayna and put her in the back of their patrol car, they entered the apartment and found Ryan Poston's body on the dining room floor, covered in blood. Crime scene investigators arrived and examined Ryan's condo, which looked a bit messy, but nothing out of the ordinary for a 29-year-old man. They found that Ryan had a concealed carry permit and owned weapons, including the Sig Sauer semi-automatic gun that Shayna used to shoot him. Based on the evidence they gathered, the investigators concluded that Ryan was sitting at the table when Shayna opened fire. They knew this because of the blood found on the table. However, the fact that several items on the dining room table were not disturbed raised doubts about Shayna's story. If there had been a fight, the items would have been disturbed. The crime scene investigators thoroughly searched Ryan's apartment, gathering every detail. At the same time, police officers questioned Ryan's neighbors to see if they had any information that could help the case. One of Ryan's neighbors, a woman named Nikki, spoke to the detective and provided some useful insights. Nikki knew Shayna well and thought that Shayna was more committed to Ryan than he was to her. According to Nikki, the couple often had loud, angry arguments that disturbed the neighborhood. Nikki remembered a specific incident several months ago when Shayna came to her door in tears, saying she was afraid of Ryan. Shayna had told Nikki that she and Ryan had a violent fight, during which he lifted her up and threw her down the hallway, causing her injuries. Nikki believed Shayna and encouraged her to report the abuse to the police, but Shayna decided not to take legal action. At the police station, detectives took Shayna to an interrogation room to question her about the shooting of her boyfriend, Ryan. Before starting the interview, the officers read Shayna her Miranda rights, reminding her that she had the right to have an attorney present. Shayna chose to exercise this right and asked for a lawyer to be present. While waiting in the interrogation room, Shayna filled out some paperwork under the supervision of a detective. Despite having asked for a lawyer, Shayna still chatted with the detective. When asked who the victim was, Shayna calmly replied that it was the man she had killed. This response showed a clear lack of emotion, as it was obvious she knew the victim was Ryan, her long-term boyfriend. Shayna remained in the interrogation room with the detectives, maintaining that she had acted in self-defense. She recounted the events of the previous night, describing how Ryan had allegedly grabbed her by the throat and violently thrown her around the apartment. At some point during the investigation, the detective temporarily left the room, replaced by another officer. Shayna began to reveal more details about her encounter with Ryan to this new officer. She alleged that Ryan had been extremely aggressive prior to the shooting, hurling insults at her, calling her crazy, and taunting her while brandishing a gun. Shayna believed that Ryan's behavior that night was fueled by drug use, which contributed to his violent outbursts. Throughout the interview, Shayna consistently stuck to her version of the events that culminated in the shooting. She claimed that Ryan was sitting at the dining room table, handling ammunition for his Sig Sauer pistol, when she noticed him staring aggressively at her from across the table. At that moment, she became aware of his intentions and realized he was trying to evict her from his condo. Shayna confessed to picking up the gun and firing it in the midst of the chaos, hitting Ryan with a single bullet. Shayna continued to describe the incident, claiming that after shooting Ryan once, she saw him twitching. Believing it was necessary to end his suffering, she fired multiple shots, ultimately killing him. In her confession, Shayna told the detective that Ryan was vain and had mentioned wanting a nose job, so she decided to grant him his wish. She deliberately aimed her gun at his face and pulled the trigger, essentially giving him the rhinoplasty he had requested. During the intense interrogation, Shayna expressed deep concerns about the impact of the incident on her academic performance and her future romantic relationships. She confided in the detective that having a dead boyfriend would make it difficult for her to find someone to marry, especially if they discovered she had killed him in self-defense. Despite her statement, the detective arrested and charged her with Ryan's murder. Shayna seemed genuinely surprised by her arrest, maintaining that she had acted in self-defense. In 2015, Shayna's trial began, and the courtroom was filled with anticipation. The prosecutor compared Shayna to Jodi Arias, who had also been charged with murdering her boyfriend, Travis Alexander, emphasizing the striking similarities between the two cases. This heightened the tension in the courtroom as everyone awaited the outcome. The prosecutor argued that Shayna was fixated on her ex-boyfriend, Ryan. According to the prosecution, Ryan dominated Shayna's thoughts, and she constantly discussed him. During the trial, the prosecutor presented testimony from Ryan's friends, who described his plans to end the relationship with Shayna and his efforts to avoid her phone calls and messages. Despite this, Shayna continued to visit Ryan's condo in Highland Heights uninvited, including on the night of the murder. The prosecution introduced evidence that Ryan had scheduled a date with Audrey Bolt, a former Miss Ohio, on the night of the murder. This information supported the prosecution's theory that Shayna was driven by jealousy and anger towards Ryan's potential new love interest. Audrey Bolt testified that she was supposed to meet Ryan for drinks at a bar on the night of the murder, but he failed to appear. It wasn't until later that she learned of his murder. The prosecution also presented evidence that Ryan had repeatedly expressed his desire to end the relationship with Shayna in the days leading up to his death. Ryan had sought advice from his father, Jay, on how to handle the situation, and Jay had counseled him to be kind to Shayna to avoid a messy breakup. However, it appears that Shayna continued to exert control over Ryan on the day he was killed. The prosecution presented evidence of several text exchanges between Ryan and Shayna, in which Ryan clearly told her he did not want to see her that weekend because he had other commitments. Nevertheless, Shayna showed up uninvited at his condo, which was not unusual for her. The argument that ensued reached a boiling point when Ryan explicitly told Shayna their relationship was over and she could no longer control him. Prosecutors argued that this statement enraged Shayna, prompting her to pick up a gun and fatally shoot Ryan. During Shayna's trial for murdering Ryan, the prosecution showed a video of her being questioned by the police to suggest she was a cold-blooded killer. In the video, Shayna's calm behavior and responses seemed to back up the idea that she had intentionally taken Ryan's life. The footage showed her dancing and singing along to music, which seemed unusual for someone who had just killed their loved one in self-defense. Normally, people in such a situation would be distraught and crying due to the loss of life and the weight of their actions. The prosecution's goal in showing the video was to make Shayna appear detached and unemotional, implying that her actions were not those of someone who had acted in self-defense. They claimed that her lack of tears and carefree behavior proved her guilt. However, this interpretation was open to debate and up to the jury to decide. In the end, the video was a key piece of evidence in the prosecution's case against Shayna, but it was just one part of the evidence presented during the trial. Shayna's defense team stuck to a clear storyline throughout her trial, arguing that Ryan was the aggressive and violent one on the night of the incident, leading Shayna to shoot him. To back up this claim, they built a picture of Ryan's mental state, suggesting that a mix of drugs he was taking, including anti-anxiety medications and amphetamines, contributed significantly to his behavior. The defense team presented the jury with autopsy results showing the presence of these drugs in Ryan's system, strengthening their argument that the drugs influenced his actions. An expert toxicologist testified for Shayna, stating that a combination of drugs like anti-anxiety medications and amphetamines could cause someone to become violent and paranoid. This testimony aimed to provide a reasonable explanation for Shayna's actions, implying that she may not have intended to harm Ryan. During Shayna's trial in April 2015, the prosecution grew increasingly worried that she might be acquitted due to being a smart, young, and attractive woman, and that her self-defense claim might persuade the jury. However, on April 23rd, the jury delivered a guilty verdict, convicting Shayna of murdering her boyfriend, Ryan Poston. At the August 2015 sentencing hearing, Shayna persisted in shifting the blame for Ryan's death onto him, which infuriated his friends and family. Despite the overwhelming evidence presented during the trial, Shayna stuck to her claim of innocence and refused to acknowledge her role in the events. Under Kentucky law, a defendant who is deemed a victim of domestic violence can be eligible for early parole after serving just 20% of their sentence. However, the judge in this case ruled that Shayna did not meet the criteria, characterizing her crime as a premeditated murder. As a result, the judge handed down a 40-year prison sentence, making Shayna eligible for parole in 17 years, when she will be 41 years old in 2032. Shayna Hubers was sentenced, but she appealed for a new trial, which was granted by a judge in August 2016. The reason for the appeal was that one of the jurors had failed to disclose their felony conviction, which is against Kentucky law since felons are not allowed to serve on juries. Following a 4-month delay, Shayna's second trial for the murder of Ryan Poston began in August 2018. During the opening arguments, Shayna's defense attorney claimed that throughout her year-and-a-half-long relationship with Ryan, Shayna tried her best to make him happy. However, their romance suffered because of it. The attorney stated that on the very first night Shayna and Ryan met, he was violent toward her, both physically and sexually. This incident had a lasting effect on her, and it took her several weeks to respond to his messages after that. Shayna's defense lawyers claimed that her high school experience of sexual assault led to a history of alcohol abuse and promiscuity. They argued that this traumatic event contributed to her behavior on the night of the murder. The defense team aimed to create a sympathetic image of Shayna, highlighting her troubled past and arguing that she was not responsible for her actions on the night of the murder. They sought to challenge the prosecution's narrative, suggesting that her behavior was the result of a combination of factors, including a history of abuse and a toxic relationship with Ryan. The defense portrayed Shayna as a victim of domestic violence at Ryan's hands, rather than as a cold-blooded murderer. They claimed that her actions were driven not by a desire for revenge or financial gain, but by years of abuse by her former partner. According to the defense, Ryan constantly criticized Shayna about her weight and chest size, pressuring her to enlarge her breasts. This constant pressure contributed to her low self-esteem and feelings of inadequacy, the defense argued. The defense claimed that Ryan and Shayna's sexual relationship was troubled, marked by frequent disagreements and frustration from both parties. According to the defense, Ryan yearned for a more romantic and intimate connection, but this desire was not fulfilled, leading to a growing rift between them. To support this claim, the defense presented evidence that Shayna had sought an injection to improve her romantic life, which was meant to address the couple's sexual difficulties and strengthen their bond. However, the defense argued that Ryan's consistent rejection and disinterest worsened the strain on their relationship, causing Shayna to become increasingly frustrated and isolated. Moreover, the defense alleged that Ryan often broke up with Shayna, only to engage in conversations with other women. In contrast, the prosecution stated that while Ryan Poston was not a perfect boyfriend, he was not abusive. They argued that Shayna did not act in self-defense when she fatally shot Ryan, but rather because he had ended their relationship that night. The prosecution claimed that it was time for Ryan to break up with Shayna, as she refused to leave him alone despite the breakup, demonstrating her inability to move on from the relationship. One of Ryan's co-workers testified that the breakup between Ryan and Shayna would be permanent this time because Ryan had always avoided breaking up with Shayna in person. According to the co-worker, Shayna had made every effort to keep Ryan. The prosecution presented text messages in which Shayna told her friends that she and Ryan's romantic encounters had brought them closer together. However, Shayna testified that these encounters had actually driven them apart. In another text message exchange, Shayna asked Ryan for sex, but Ryan was taking antidepressants, which had reduced his sex drive due to the medication's side effects. However, when Shayna testified, she claimed that Ryan had forced her into sexual intercourse. After 5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Shayna guilty of murdering Ryan despite contradictory testimonies and conflicting evidence. During the sentencing hearing, Shayna's mother emotionally addressed the judge, sharing stories of her daughter's singing talent, which had earned her multiple college scholarships. Through tears, she begged the jury to consider granting Shayna parole, arguing that her daughter still had the potential to positively impact people's lives. The mother acknowledged, however, that her pleas did not minimize the grief and pain experienced by Ryan Poston's family. Shayna was given a life sentence with no chance of parole. As part of her sentence, she must serve at least 17 years before becoming eligible for parole in 2032. She is currently serving her sentence at the Kentucky Correctional Institute for Women in Pewee Valley, Kentucky. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Corey Richins. Eric Richins was born on May 13, 1982, and had a profound impact on the lives of those around him. Throughout his childhood and teenage years, Eric was fiercely passionate about sports, excelling in basketball, baseball, and soccer, which reflected his dedication to staying active. His true love, however, was anything that took him outdoors, particularly hunting, where his exceptional marksmanship and keen eye earned him numerous trophies from around the world. Eric was renowned for his dynamic personality, which radiated joy and laughter wherever he went. He possessed a natural talent for telling stories, playing harmless pranks on friends, and contagious laughter that would light up the room. Eric was undoubtedly the life of every party, leaving a lasting impression on everyone he met. Eric, a Utah resident, possessed an extensive collection of motorized vehicles, including trucks, four-wheelers, and snowmobiles, which he used to explore the outdoors and satisfy his thirst for adventure. Although he loved having fun, Eric was deeply committed to his faith and was an active member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. With the encouragement of his family, he volunteered for a 2-year mission trip to Mexico City, where he honed his Spanish language skills. Upon completing high school, Eric pursued higher education at the University of Utah, graduating in 2009 with a bachelor's degree in international studies and a minor in Spanish. Eric met Corey Darden at Home Depot, where she was an employee. As a regular customer due to his construction work, Eric developed a friendly connection with Corey over time. He was attracted to her charm and beauty, but was too shy to approach her directly. So Eric asked a friend to help him get her contact information. One day, while Eric's friend was shopping at Home Depot, he casually asked Corey for her phone number, mentioning Eric's interest in getting to know her better. Appreciative of his friend's help, Eric anxiously waited to hear back. It was now up to Eric to make the next move, and he finally summoned the courage to call Corey, arranging their first in-person meeting. Unbeknownst to him, this meeting would alter his life forever. From the moment Eric and Corey met, they clicked. Their connection was undeniable, and their first date marked the start of a romantic journey. As they introduced each other to their families, their bond grew stronger. Corey's mother and brothers instantly took to Eric, while Eric's family was equally impressed by Corey's kind nature and how well she fitted in with him. Although Eric's sisters, Katie and Amy, were initially cautious, they soon warmed up to Corey and made her feel part of their family. Eric and Corey tied the knot in 2013 with a private wedding ceremony. 2 years later, Corey gave birth to their first child, Carter, and later Ashton, and finally Weston, completing their family of 5. Eric proved to be a natural at fatherhood, and his sons looked up to him with admiration. He was exceedingly proud of his boys, celebrating their every achievement, whether it was academic, in sports, or in the arts, and was always present to cheer them on and congratulate them on their accomplishments. Eric eventually launched a stonemasonry business which proved extremely successful. His exceptional craftsmanship and meticulous attention to detail set him apart, attracting clients seeking his expertise in crafting stunning stonework. The thriving business brought financial security to Eric and his family. Meanwhile, Corey's real estate ventures also generated a significant income. Her entrepreneurial drive and in-depth knowledge of the local market made her a vital contributor to their family's growing prosperity. She would buy homes, renovate them, and sell them at a profit. As a result, the Richens family built considerable wealth, and their lifestyle embodied the pinnacle of success. On the surface, the Richens family seemed to have a perfect life. However, this illusion of perfection shattered on March 4, 2022, when Corey made a frantic emergency call to report that her husband Eric was not responding. When paramedics arrived, they discovered that Eric had sadly died. Corey was devastated by the news and called her mom, Lisa, who rushed over. Her brothers DJ and Ronnie joined them, struggling to process Eric's sudden death. They'd celebrated Corey's business success at their new mansion earlier, with Corey making Eric a Moscow Mule before bed. She'd slept with her son due to his nightmares, and when she returned to their room at 3 a.m., found Eric cold and unresponsive. As Corey waited for the paramedics to arrive, she remembered the dispatcher's instructions to perform CPR on Eric, which she claimed to have followed. While the paramedics were unable to determine the exact cause of Eric's death, they suspected it might have been an aneurysm, given that Eric was a healthy 39-year-old with no known medical conditions. However, It emerged later that Eric had confided in Corey about chest pains the night before his death, which lent further support to the aneurysm theory. But the autopsy results were to reveal a shocking truth. Eric's death was caused by a lethal dose of fentanyl, a powerful and dangerous pain medication that can be fatal in excessive amounts. This discovery raised a critical question for the investigators. How did Eric ingest this substance? Eric's family blamed his recreational drug use for the fentanyl in his system after he died. Corey said Eric took THC gummies nightly to relax, but they worried about their source, suspecting he bought them illegally. Despite this, Eric's family firmly rejected the allegations, convinced that there was more to the story, and urged investigators to explore alternative explanations. Meanwhile, Corey attempted to move forward with her life, but her brother Ronnie disclosed that she was facing immense challenges. The loss of her husband and their father had created a void in their lives, and their 3 sons were acting out in response to the uncertainty surrounding his death. Detectives suspected foul play in Eric's death. After Corey appeared on Utah News to promote her book on grief, she was arrested May 8, 2023, accused of murdering her husband. The community was stunned, trying to make sense of the sudden, tragic turn of events. Corey has been accused of homicide by poisoning. Eric's family claims that Corey deliberately added a lethal dose of fentanyl to the Moscow Mule she prepared for him on the night he died. However, Corey's lawyer argues that no fentanyl was found on the glassware at their home. Corey denies any involvement in Eric's death, stating that she had no motive to harm him. Corey's mother, Lisa, was shocked and disbelieving when she heard about her daughter's alleged role in Eric's death. She told investigators that the couple seemed happy and there was no reason for Corey to kill him. However, the investigation revealed that the relationship between Corey and Eric was not as perfect as it seemed. The couple had issues, and Corey, a stay-at-home mom for several years, longed for independence. Furthermore, Corey was growing increasingly frustrated with Eric's frequent hunting trips. Lisa revealed that Eric had been unfaithful in the marriage, and the couple had confided in her about the affair. Eric and Corey sought counseling to address their problems, but Eric's family denies that he ever cheated on Corey. According to them, the couple's decision to seek counseling was driven by Eric's love for his sons and his desire to save the marriage. Eric had started thinking about what would happen if he got a divorce, despite trying to save his marriage. To protect his assets, he took some precautions. Without telling anyone what he was doing, he set up a secret trust with his sister Katie. During the investigation, it was found that there were 6 life insurance policies on Eric, worth a total of $3 million. 2 months before Eric died, Corey had forged his signature on another policy worth $100,000. It was also discovered that Corey had allegedly taken money from Eric's personal accounts and misused funds from his business over several years. A spokesperson for Eric's family claimed that Corey's house flipping business was in trouble, despite her claims that it was doing well. In fact, it was millions of dollars in debt. The spokesperson alleged that Corey urgently needed money, and that, according to a premarital agreement they had signed, she would only inherit Eric's business assets if he died before her, while they were still married. Corey's attorney rejected the allegations, clarifying that her business was not in debt. They pointed out that temporarily taking on debt through lines of credit was a standard practice in the house flipping business, and that once the properties were sold, the debt would be settled. The attorney stressed that the large figure cited by the spokesperson simply represented the volume of business transactions involved. Lisa, Corey's mom, said Eric backed Corey's business ventures, including buying the Heber Valley mansion where they partied the night he died. Corey bought the 2017-built abandoned mansion with investor help, planning to develop it into a recreational spot and sell for a profit, potentially earning $12 million, a huge jump from the $3 million purchase price. Eric's family says he opposed buying a mansion, contradicting reports. They claim he argued with his wife about it, and that Corey gave him a fentanyl-laced drink on the night he died. They also accuse Corey of previously trying to harm Eric on a Greece trip. However, Corey's brother Ronnie denies these claims, saying Eric's illness was due to taking antibiotics and being mistakenly served liquor. Eric's family claims Corey tried to kill him twice, including on Valentine's Day 2022, when he had a severe allergic reaction after eating a sandwich she brought him. They also questioned her behavior after his death, including an incident where she punched his sister in the face and neck while trying to access a safe containing $125,000 to $165,000 in cash. Corey had a 4-hour bail hearing, handcuffed beside her attorney, trying to convince the judge to release her on bail. Prosecutors presented 3 witnesses and evidence, claiming she poisoned her husband. A cell phone expert testified about Corey's Google searches, including how to retrieve deleted iPhone texts and a lethal fentanyl dose. Her attorney countered that these searches happened after her husband's death, as Corey sought answers to her own accusations. Prosecutors questioned the lead detective about Corey's sources for the drugs used to kill Eric. A woman named Carmen Laber, who worked for Corey, told investigators about a meeting where Corey asked her to buy fentanyl for an investor with a back injury. Carmen, with a criminal history, agreed and bought 15 to 30 pills, exchanging them for cash on February 11, 2022, days before Eric's poisoning attempt. During the investigation, Carmen revealed that Corey got in touch with her again, saying he wanted stronger drugs. She said Corey paid for the pills with a check about a week after Eric died. However, Corey's lawyer disputed this, suggesting the check might have been payment for cleaning work instead. The lawyer also tried to raise doubts about Carmen's trustworthiness by pointing out that she was a convicted felon on probation. At the bail hearing, Eric's sister spoke to the judge about the family's intense emotional pain after Eric's death, and their fear that if Corey were released on bail, they would suffer even more. The judge decided to keep Corey in custody. In 2023, Corey had a serious medical crisis in jail after taking prescribed medication, which caused her to have a seizure and required hospitalization. While searching her cell, jail officials found a handwritten letter that prosecutors claimed provided additional evidence of Corey's plans and motivations. Prosecutors requested a no-contact order, citing the letter as proof of Corey's attempt to intimidate witnesses. Prosecutors claim Corey wrote her mom, instructing her brother Ronnie on how to testify in court, saying Eric got drugs in Mexico. The letter stated Ronnie should say Eric admitted to buying pain pills in Tijuana and to obtain texts about Eric's drug use. Corey adamantly denied the letter was witness tampering, stating that the letter was nothing but a fictional creation she wrote as a fantasy story. The judge denied the motion for no contact, stating that the state failed to prove witness tampering. Corey's family seeks custody of their 3 sons, currently living with Eric's relative. The boys have regular video calls with Corey in jail, and her family attends their public sports events. Corey faces 25 years to life if convicted of murdering her husband Eric with fentanyl. His family has filed civil cases, believing she's after his money. The trial starts in 2025. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ekaterina Bauman. Ekaterina Bauman was born on May 13, 1989, in Leningrad, a city in Russia that would later be renamed St. Petersburg. In 2009, when she was 20, Ekaterina went on vacation to Turkey with her family, which marked the beginning of a series of events that would ultimately end in tragedy. It was during this trip that she met Walter Bauman, a German citizen 13 years her senior. Notably, Walter was fluent in Russian, having been born in Kazakhstan, a country that, like Russia, was part of the USSR until 1991. Walter, who had been educated in Germany and was financially successful, struggled with his personal life. Despite his desire to find the perfect partner, he himself fell short of being an ideal catch. Still living with his parents, Walter paid little attention to his appearance, and often dressed sloppily, making him unattractive to many. He frequently met women online, mostly from Russia, and had been chatting with one particular woman for a while. Eventually, he decided to visit Russia to meet her in person. However, when they finally met, Walter failed to make a good impression, and she lost interest in continuing their relationship. That's why his friends were stunned when he had a holiday romance in Turkey. Ekaterina was a young and beautiful woman who could have had numerous admirers, yet she chose Walter. This romantic love story began like many others, with two lonely hearts feeling an undeniable attraction to each other. After returning to their respective homes, Ekaterina to Russia and Walter to Germany, they continued to communicate through social media and lengthy phone calls. Walter told his friends about Ekaterina's kind nature and beauty, and how they would spend hours talking on the phone and even exchange poetry. He would occasionally visit her in St. Petersburg, investing a significant amount of money in these trips. Ekaterina was in her second year of university in St. Petersburg when Walter's serious intentions led him to help her transfer to Hamburg University. This resulted in Ekaterina leaving Russia for Germany in 2010. In Bremerhaven, people described her as a bright, attractive, and lively young woman. Despite the distance, she remained in close contact with her family back in Russia. Ekaterina continued her business administration studies, which she had begun in Russia. She enjoyed running, practicing yoga, and seeking out peaceful spots. A few months later, Ekaterina and Walter got married. According to Alexander, a friend of Walter's who had experience as a wedding photographer, their ceremony was lavish. He recalled that Ekaterina was the happiest and most stunning bride he had ever seen, and the celebration was certainly expensive. The registration took place at a lighthouse, after which they rode away in a grand white horse-drawn carriage, a sight unlike any in Germany. Despite the small guest list, which seemed unusual, the wedding came to a close before dawn. Walter and Ekaterina's wedding photo exudes happiness. Walter appears as a supportive husband, while Ekaterina tenderly hugs him and beams with joy. They seem like two people perfectly suited for each other. As they embarked on their new life together, their story resembled a fairy tale. However, instead of a grand castle, they moved in with Walter's parents. This marked the beginning of Ekaterina's challenges in Germany. Living with her in-laws proved difficult. The fairy tale illusion started to crumble. Walter's mother, a tough and influential figure, would play a crucial role in how this story unfolds. It's essential to provide some background on her. Ekaterina's mother-in-law, Ludmila Bauman, lived in Kazakhstan for the first 38 years of her life. She excelled as a student and went on to hold various jobs, including assistant chemist-technologist, chemical engineer, and middle school teacher. At 18, she got married and had a son, who became the center of her universe. Ludmila's family had German ancestry, which led them to leave Kazakhstan for Germany, where they settled in Bremerhaven. She worked at a marine institute dedicated to researching global warming and participated in around 25 expeditions, including Arctic explorations. Ludmila's immigration story inspired many fellow immigrants in Germany, earning her a place of honor with her portrait displayed at the Immigration Center in Bremerhaven. Ludmila struggled to come to terms with her son Walter being a grown man in his 30s. She would frequently call him, inquiring about his whereabouts and when he would return home, due to her overprotectiveness, as a result of him being her only child. Walter worked at the port, earning a substantial income of around 4,000 euros a month, which often required him to work on weekends and holidays. While not a workaholic, he was frugal and saved most of his earnings. When Ekaterina became pregnant in 2017, Walter decided to allocate a small portion of his savings to purchase a house, allowing them to move out of his parents' home. Ludmila's interference in their marriage and criticism of Ekaterina's role as a homemaker further strained their relationship, making it difficult for the young couple to establish their independence. The move did not improve Walter and Ekaterina's relationship. Ludmila, Walter's mother, remained a constant presence in their home, interfering in all aspects of her son's life. After their daughter was born, the tension between Walter and Ekaterina increased, with Walter becoming more controlling and physically abusive. The authorities were initially informed about the Baumann family's domestic violence issues, but the case was quickly closed after the couple claimed to have reconciled. However, the abuse persisted. Walter secretly recorded arguments with Ekaterina, accusing her of being a bad mother and mentally unstable. In fall 2020, Ekaterina reached out to a support center for domestic violence victims after leaving Walter with their daughter. Desperate to win them back, Walter promised to change, and Ekaterina eventually forgave him and returned home with their daughter. Despite this, the fighting between the spouses continued. Whenever Walter acknowledged his wrongdoing, he would give Ekaterina gifts or plan a family trip. Not only did Walter's attitude towards Ekaterina change, but also towards their child. Walter exerted total control over his daughter. When at home, he insisted on keeping her in his sight at all times. Even at 3 years old, he wouldn't let her out of his arms when they went out together. He halved his working hours at the port to free up more time with his daughter. He'd take her to kindergarten and pick her up in the evening. He even cooked for her and had her sleep in the parents' room at night. Those who knew Walter well regarded him as a calculating individual with a flair for drama. He was skilled at manipulating people, and accumulating wealth was a top priority for him. He often came across as anxious and impatient. After Ekaterina had her child, she made several trips to visit her family in Russia, with Walter always by her side. He was worried that she might decide to stay in Russia permanently, which would mean he'd lose access to his daughter. As Ekaterina saw her husband's behavior become increasingly abusive, she started thinking about getting a divorce. At the same time, she realized that important documents like her identification and papers were missing. It was later discovered that Walter had taken all her documents to his mother's house, where he had left them. When Walter's mother came to visit, the couple got into another argument. As a result, Ekaterina was forced to leave the house. She was treated like trash, thrown out without any consideration. Ekaterina went to the police, and they helped resolve the situation. One time, Ekaterina and Walter had a major argument just before their child started kindergarten, which led to youth support services being notified by the administration about the family situation. As a result, the couple received 6 weeks of child education support. A family crisis counselor was assigned to work with the family and monitor the child's well-being. The counselor ultimately concluded that it was not safe for the child to be left in the care of her parents. Ekaterina's only reason for staying with her husband was because of their daughter, but she was unable to take her back to Russia because she needed Walter's consent for their daughter to leave Germany, which would mean he was not opposed to their child leaving the country. In August 2021, Ekaterina escaped with her daughter for the second time and sought help from a women's crisis center, where she reported that her husband was threatening her life. However, social services recommended placing her 5-year-old girl in an orphanage, a move that a psychologist from the Youth Affairs Department deemed extremely dire. Ekaterina initially agreed to let the Youth Affairs Service place her daughter in foster care, but Walter and his mother opposed the idea. As a result, both parents were required to take care of the child for a few days. The arrangement was that the girl would live with her father for some time, and then move to a women's shelter with her mother, on the condition that she attend kindergarten to learn German. After a few weeks, the family was reunited again. According to some Russian sources, Ekaterina had unpleasant roommates at the women's shelter, and the kindergarten the daughter was required to attend was too far away. Ekaterina returned home, but her marriage was crumbling, and she and her husband began the divorce process, living in separate rooms. Her desire to return to Russia grew, but Walter, her husband, refused to let her take their daughter, insisting the child stay with him in Germany. In December 2021, Ekaterina traveled to St. Petersburg alone, where she met a Russian pilot from Omsk, whom she had met online. Following her trip, she returned to Germany in mid-January 2022 and continued her daily online chats with the pilot, exchanging romantic messages. However, on February 4th, 2022, Ekaterina suddenly stopped contacting her family. She packed an empty suitcase, taking 13,000 euros from her husband's savings, and left. She abandoned her phone, keys, clothes, and most distressingly, her 5-year-old daughter. Walter, Ekaterina's husband, gave the following account to the police on February 6, 2022, after Ekaterina's parents were unable to contact her for 2 days and requested the German police to perform a welfare check. Ekaterina's mother, Svetlana, explained to journalists that they discovered her disappearance in an unusual manner, as they couldn't reach her for several days. According to Walter, he last saw Ekaterina on February 5th and assumed she wasn't responding because she had no money on her balance. The entire city launched a massive search for Ekaterina, scouring every inch of the city, posting flyers, and examining every possible scenario. Amidst the flurry of activity, one person who seemed remarkably unconcerned was Walter. While others were busy plastering the city with missing person posters, Walter was engrossed in renovating his house. It took 4 days for the police to finally investigate the Baumann family home, where Ekaterina was last seen. By that time, Walter had completed the renovations, including painting the floors in the guest room and replacing the couch. Moreover, he was observed buying a large quantity of cleaning supplies from a local store. During the investigation, the police discovered that the surveillance footage from the house's video cameras had mysteriously vanished. They conducted a 3-hour search of the house, accompanied by a detection dog that was led through the garage and the house. The dog exhibited slight agitation in the garage, but failed to provide any concrete indication. Initial tests by the crime scene investigators yielded no evidence within the house or garage. However, they did find a knife and an electric shocker in the cluttered car, which were seized as potential evidence. The officers were struck by Walter's apparent lack of concern for his missing wife. Instead, he seemed more interested in gaining sole custody of their 5-year-old daughter in the event of her wife's absence. Despite the ongoing search efforts, no signs of Ekaterina were found, and it was as if she had vanished into thin air. The police knew that it was highly unlikely for a young mother to abandon her daughter, personal documents, and phone in a foreign country. Walter's statement that Ekaterina had left with an empty suitcase only fueled the police's suspicion. The mysterious disappearance of Ekaterina sent shockwaves throughout the city and beyond. Even strangers, including women who had never met Ekaterina, banded together to search for her, vowing to continue until the truth was uncovered. 2 weeks after Ekaterina's disappearance, a massive search effort was organized, with around 400 volunteers, including rescue dogs, scouring Bremerhaven in North Germany. The incident sparked a huge reaction on social media, and Ekaterina's family managed to draw attention to her disappearance in Russia, with the story being featured on major Russian TV channels. Ekaterina's mother revealed to journalists that her daughter had been in a 12-year relationship with Walter, but for the past year and a half, their marriage had been marked by constant arguing, with Walter physically abusing Ekaterina on multiple occasions. She claimed that Walter had isolated Ekaterina from others, taken away her identification documents and bank cards, and prohibited her from meeting anyone. On March 1, 2022, a disturbing discovery was made 25 days after Ekaterina's disappearance. In Bremerhaven, a passerby out for a walk found a strange suitcase that had washed up on the River Weser shore. The gruesome contents included human body parts packed in garbage bags, but not all of the remains were found. Tragically, the victim was identified as 32-year-old Ekaterina Baumann. In a chilling twist, the suitcase was found near the same lighthouse where Ekaterina had exchanged her vows. The discovery of the suitcase was a crucial breakthrough in the investigation, as it could have easily floated out to the North Sea, leaving Ekaterina's fate a mystery forever. Instead, her loved ones were forced to bid a final farewell to their beloved daughter, mother, and friend. Following the discovery of the body, the family's house was searched for a second time, and forensic experts spent several days collecting and analyzing evidence. The police investigation uncovered a trove of suspicious items, including a bottle of strong sedative found in Ekaterina's blood, single-use gloves, foil, adhesive tapes, and large quantities of garbage bags and cleaning products. In the garage and shed, investigators found canisters of acetic acid, solvents, and bleach, as well as a set of suitcase keys and the pink scarf Ekaterina wore in her last selfie. Notably, the police found very few of Ekaterina's personal belongings, and most of her clothes had been discarded. A cherished wedding photo, a reminder of happier times, was hidden behind the piano. In a surprising twist, the white jacket Ekaterina wore in her last selfie was discovered in a trash container at the workplace of Ludmila Bauman, Walter's mother. Ekaterina's life tragically came to an end on Friday, February 4, 2022. That evening, at around 4:30 p.m., she decided to take a 10-minute walk, wearing a light-colored jacket and yellow skirt, which was captured by her neighbor's security cameras. The family then had dinner together, during which Ekaterina drank one glass of wine, while Walter consumed the rest, leading him to retire to bed at around 8 p.m. According to official court records, Ekaterina's phone signal was last detected at 7:41 p.m. Later, at 8:25 p.m., she made a video call to her new romantic partner from her computer, appearing to be in a good mood. She promised to call him again after putting her child to bed, but unfortunately, she never made that call, nor did she contact anyone else that evening. 2 hours later, her Russian pilot acquaintance sent her a goodnight message, which remained unread. A subsequent forensic investigation revealed that Ekaterina had passed away approximately 2 hours after dinner, as confirmed by the analysis of her stomach contents. The autopsy showed traces of strong sedatives and alcohol in her bloodstream. Furthermore, the forensic experts discovered that her hyoid bone was broken and the cause of death was determined to be strangulation. The examination also revealed that very sharp tools were used to inflict additional injuries on her body. The next morning, Walter briefly opened his car door at 7:22 a.m. Later, at 10:20 a.m., he drove off and did not return until 4:49 p.m. 3 days later, Walter phoned his wife to perpetuate the story that she had abandoned him. He also sent her several texts, inquiring about her whereabouts with the question, "Where are you?" Before Ekaterina vanished, she and her husband Walter were in frequent and intense contact through WhatsApp daily conversations. However, after February 4th, all communication between them abruptly stopped, which was highly unusual. In mid-February, Walter took his car to auto service, instructing an employee to meticulously clean the interior from top to bottom. On August 26, 2022, the trial commenced. The prosecutor alleged that Walter spiked his wife's drink with sedatives, then strangled her once she fell asleep. The prosecution posited that Walter's motive was his fear of losing custody of their daughter in the event of divorce, as well as the potential financial losses. It was revealed that blood stains were discovered in the garage, which Walter had attempted to clean according to internet advice. The blood was found hidden under the shelf on the floor, on the stairs, and in the seams. Moreover, despite thorough cleaning, bloodstains were also detected on the carpet in the trunk of his car. Experts from the Institute of Forensic Medicine confirmed that Ekaterina's blood was present in all the areas mentioned. The police seized Walter's phone and computer, which provided crucial answers. Prior to the tragic event, Walter conducted numerous online searches, including queries about avoiding punishment for taking a life, dissolving meat with acid, and reading others' WhatsApp messages. In the period from December 2021 to February 2022, he made approximately 500 searches, strongly indicating that he planned the crime. On the day of Ekaterina's disappearance, Walter searched for electric shocker twice. Forensic experts discovered signs of electrocution on Ekaterina's body, leading investigators to believe Walter used a shocker to check if his wife was still alive. During the trial, Walter wore his wedding ring and claimed to be a widower. For 2 months, he remained silent, refusing to comment on the charges. Occasionally, when witnesses testified, he would cover his ears, pretending the testimony didn't concern him. The only time he showed emotion was when his mother testified, and he even cried. He folded his hands as if in prayer, begging his mother to get me out of here in a letter, and it seemed she agreed to help him during her testimony. Ludmila Bauman claimed responsibility for taking Ekaterina's life, not her son. She visited her son's house in the middle of the night, responding to his request to care for her granddaughter. Upon arrival, she found Ekaterina deeply asleep on the couch. Ludmila tried to wake her, but Ekaterina awoke and hit her in the face, sparking a fight. According to Ludmila, she choked Ekaterina during the altercation. She also admitted to handling Ekaterina's body after the fact. Despite her confession, Ludmila described Ekaterina as a beloved daughter figure, leading to speculation that her immense love for her son might have driven her to take the fall for him. Ludmila walked out of the courtroom a free woman, despite having incriminated herself. The jury and the prosecutor's office didn't buy her story, thinking she was trying to shield her son. Even seasoned lawyers were stunned by Ludmila's bold move. Her own attorney demanded her arrest, while her son's lawyers called for Walter's release, but it didn't happen. Ludmila remained free, while her son stayed behind bars. But she refused to give up. She penned a letter to the court, explaining in detail what she'd done with the body. Again, she swore her son was innocent and asked to be questioned further and charged. But the court wouldn't budge, still doubting her. Ludmila's involvement in the crime was established when she provided information that led to the discovery of a missing fragment, which was not found in the suitcase. The accuracy of her tip was confirmed when the police found another weighted bag. Furthermore, data from Ludmila's phone pedometer revealed that she had walked 220 yards around 0:40 a.m. on the night of the murder, corroborating evidence from neighbors, video cameras that showed a person passing by Walter's and Ekaterina's house. Additionally, Walter's father's phone activity suggested that he had driven Ludmila to the son's house, contradicting his initial claim of being asleep. It was later determined that Ekaterina was already deceased when Ludmila arrived at the son's house, which meant that Ludmila had given false testimony. Although she may not have actively participated in the murder, Ludmila was present during the subsequent events and helped conceal evidence, making her an accomplice. However, under German law, Ludmila was not arrested or charged for her role in the crime. As the verdict drew near, Ludmila grew increasingly desperate in her efforts to exonerate her son. She penned a second letter to the judge, claiming responsibility for the crime and stating that she, not Walter, was the perpetrator. In the letter, Ludmila alleged that she had harbored a deep hatred for Ekaterina and had concocted a plan to make it seem as though she had poisoned herself over her unrequited love for a Russian pilot. Ludmila claimed that she had entered her son's house to leave a farewell note written in Ekaterina's name, but Ekaterina had awoken, forcing Ludmila to strangle her. The court, however, remained unconvinced by Ludmila's confession, as all evidence pointed to Walter's guilt. Throughout the proceedings, Walter remained silent until, in one of the final hearings, he read from his 230-page statement detailing his life in Kazakhstan, his relationships, and his love for Ekaterina. Despite touching on the tumultuous nature of their relationship, including the emotional burnout and psychological issues that led to frequent quarrels, Walter only briefly mentioned the fateful night, stating that he was asleep while his mother took Ekaterina's life and dragged her body to the garage. Walter unequivocally blamed his mother for the heinous crime, accusing her of betrayal, manipulation, and landed him in prison. Addressing the judge, he implored that his daughter, having lost her mother, must not be forced to lose her father as well. The most disturbing aspect of this story is not the horrific details of the crime itself, but the fact that the entire ordeal played out in front of the couple's 5-year-old daughter. As a result, the Russian grandmother, Svetlana, has been prohibited from contacting her granddaughter, who has been placed in a German foster family. Walter was at home with his daughter when the traumatic event occurred, leaving the child with severe psychological scars. The girl, who is now living in a special facility for traumatized children under a new name, often mutters to herself, pointing to her head and forearms, saying she witnessed everything. Svetlana is fighting to obtain guardianship of her granddaughter, but German authorities have denied her even phone contact. On May 23, 2023, when the verdict was announced, Ekaterina's daughter was 6 years old. Walter Baumann received a life sentence, although German law allows for parole eligibility after 15 years. Ekaterina's ashes were buried in her hometown of St. Petersburg. The case of Ludmila Baumann, Walter's wife, remains open, and it's possible that she may be charged as an accomplice, but no such charges have been filed yet.